Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into America in the 1880s, a world of marble mansions, clattering factories, glowing electric lamps, and moustaches so impressive they appeared to hold public office. On the surface, the Gilded Age looked magnificent. There were grand hotels, silver dinner services, private railway cars, opera boxes, silk gowns, and industrialists building houses large enough to develop their own weather systems. But underneath all that polish was a country moving at a speed nobody had properly agreed to. Cities were swelling, railways were multiplying, fortunes were appearing overnight, usually in the hands of men who considered sleep a personal weakness and fair wages, an interesting philosophical concept. Immigrants arrived by the hundreds of thousands. Factories shook entire neighbourhoods awake. Horses supplied nearly all urban transportation and, with admirable consistency, deposited evidence of this service directly into the road. This was the Gilded Age, the real one. Not the version where everyone lives in a Newport mansion and spends the afternoon declining marriage proposals beside a tasteful arrangement of lilies. Most people were not choosing between the opera and dinner at Delmonico's. They were choosing between rent, coal, and whether the youngest child genuinely needed new shoes this month. Before we go any further, thank you, genuinely, for choosing to spend part of your night here. If you enjoy these slow wanderings through history, please consider liking the video and subscribing. But only if you actually want to. No pressure. You have enough obligations already. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It is always 2 a.m. somewhere, and someone is always insisting they will listen for only 10 more minutes. The channel is also on Spotify, so you can find the link in the description if you prefer to fall asleep while your phone lies face down and quietly judges your screen time statistics. Now, dim the lights. Put a fan on if you have one. Pull the blanket up. Turn the pillow over to the cool side while civilization still permits this luxury. Get truly comfortable, because tonight you are going to feel extremely grateful for indoor plumbing, labour laws, antibiotics, refrigerated food, and mattresses that have not been filled with horsehair by a man working beside an open flame. But first, let's sit with a few questions. What did an American city smell like when thousands of horses were using the streets every day? How much privacy could you expect in a tenement apartment containing 3 generations and 1 window? Was the new telephone a miraculous communications device or simply a wooden box through which strangers shouted? Could your breakfast contain chalk, sawdust, contaminated milk, or all 3 as part of a balanced diet? How many servants did it take to make one wealthy family appear naturally comfortable? What happened if you lost a finger at the factory before lunch? And if the doctor arrived carrying mercury, morphine, and complete confidence, which of those should worry you most? Congratulations! You have just woken up in New York City. The year is 1884. The Brooklyn Bridge is still new enough to impress visitors. Electric light is beginning to glow in wealthy districts. Chester A. Arthur is president. Somewhere nearby, a railroad owner is explaining that poverty builds character from inside a private carriage lined with velvet. Welcome to the Gilded Age. The future has arrived and it smells strongly of horses. Let's begin with waking up, because the first thing you notice is the temperature. If you are wealthy, you open your eyes beneath embroidered covers in a high-ceilinged bedroom where a coal fire has been lit by someone who entered quietly before dawn and tried not to resent you personally. The room is impressive, the furniture is carved, and the wallpaper contains enough flowers to confuse a migrating bee. It is also cold everywhere except within a narrow diplomatic zone around the fireplace. If you are poor, the fire may have gone out hours ago, and several members of your family may be sleeping nearby because sharing a room is cheaper than heating 2. You leave the blankets reluctantly and place your feet on a floor that feels like a formal punishment. Central heating exists in a few modern buildings, but it has not arrived to rescue you. For now, warmth is something you stand near rather than something your house reliably provides. The fire is not simply burning. It is being maintained, watched, fed, cleaned, and negotiated with. Coal produces steady heat, but it also produces ash, soot, smoke, and a fine black dust that settles over furniture with the patience of a disappointed relative. In a wealthy household, a servant has already carried coal upstairs, removed yesterday's ashes, opened the grate, laid kindling, and encouraged the flames into life before you stirred beneath the covers. You experience this as a pleasant warmth near your bed. The servant experiences it as several flights of stairs while holding a heavy metal scuttle before breakfast. The fireplace itself heats unevenly. Your face becomes warm while your back remains cold. Turn around, and the arrangement reverses. You rotate slowly like a piece of meat being cooked by someone who has lost interest halfway through. Thick curtains help keep out drafts, as do carpets, upholstered furniture, and heavy fabric hung wherever cold air might attempt an entrance. Unfortunately, these same curtains and carpets collect dust, coal smoke, and the general history of the household. Cleaning them requires beating, brushing, shaking, and a level of commitment rarely inspired by interior decoration. If you live in a tenement, farmhouse, boarding house, or modest city dwelling, the morning begins differently. Your heat may come from a coal or wood stove serving several purposes at once. It warms the room, heats water, dries clothing, and cooks food, which makes it the most productive member of the household. It also presents a constant risk of burns, smoke, sparks, and fire. Buildings are crowded, chimneys are imperfect, and wooden walls have an unfortunate tendency to respond dramatically when introduced to flame. You may have banked the fire before bed, covering the coals so they smoulder through the night. In the morning you kneel close, stir the ashes, add kindling, and blow gently until a small orange glow returns. If it catches, the day has begun well. If it does not, you search for dry wood, more coal, or a neighbour whose fire has survived. Matches exist, although they are not always cheap enough to waste carelessly. Fire is both a necessity and a resource that must be managed with the seriousness modern people reserve for a failing phone battery. The fuel itself costs money. Coal prices rise in winter precisely when you need it most, which is an economic tradition that will survive the century with remarkable health. Poor families may heat only one room. Doors remain closed to preserve warmth, and everyone gathers in the same space to cook, work, eat, sew, read, argue, and sleep. Privacy shrinks as the temperature falls. A cold spell turns family togetherness from a sentimental ideal into a compulsory seating arrangement. Some newer homes, hotels, offices, and apartment buildings have furnaces, steam pipes, or hot air systems. These are signs of modern comfort, though modern comfort still includes clanging pipes, uneven temperatures, dry air, and the possibility that the boiler is being managed by someone whose qualifications consist mainly of owning a shovel. Radiators can make one room stifling while the next remains cold enough to store meat. Progress has arrived, but it has not learned moderation. For now, you pull on your clothes quickly and move closer to the grate. The flames crackle. Coal smoke hangs faintly in the air. Frost whitens the window, and somewhere below another bucket of fuel is being carried upstairs. Your bedroom is elegant, perhaps even luxurious, but the warmth inside it depends entirely on fire, labour, and someone waking earlier than you. You stretch your hands toward the heat and congratulate yourself on surviving the first 5 minutes of the day. The fire is warm, the floor is not, and the Gilded Age has already established which one of you is in charge. Now you need to wash, which sounds simple until you remember that water does not yet emerge obediently from a chrome tap at precisely the temperature you prefer. In a prosperous household, a servant carries up a pitcher of water and pours it into a ceramic basin. You wash your face, hands, neck, and the portions of yourself most likely to be inspected by society. A full bath requires a tub, numerous buckets, heated water, muscular assistance, and enough planning to resemble a minor naval operation. In a working household, you may use water drawn from a shared pump, carried upstairs, and carefully conserved because every drop has weight. Soap can be harsh, towels are not always soft, and the room cools rapidly while you attempt to become respectable. You emerge cleaner, certainly, although perhaps not clean in the modern sense. The important thing is that your collar will hide the negotiations. The washstand beside your bed may have a marble top, a decorated bowl, a matching pitcher, and a little soap dish arranged with perfect calm. It does not show the kitchen fire used to heat the water, the servant who filled the jug, or the staircase climbed while trying not to spill it. In the Gilded Age, even a clean face can require several invisible employees. You begin with cold or lukewarm water, depending on the household budget, and whether anyone remembered you before the kettle was needed downstairs. A cloth is dipped, wrung out, and moved briskly over the skin. The face receives attention, so do the hands, ears, neck, and underarms. Everything beneath the clothing is addressed according to time, privacy, season, and personal enthusiasm. Fresh linen worn against the body helps absorb perspiration and allows the outer costume to maintain its respectable silence. Commercial soap is becoming more widely available, advertised with confident promises of purity, beauty, and domestic virtue. Some varieties smell pleasantly of flowers. Others retain the sterner character of animal fat and lye and approach your skin with the enthusiasm of a floor cleaner. You wash carefully because removing dirt is useful, while removing the upper layer of your hands feels excessive. A full bath is a much larger event. In the wealthiest new homes, permanent bathrooms and piped water are becoming symbols of modern sophistication. Some have hot and cold taps, porcelain fixtures, and water closets shown to visitors with nearly the same pride as the art collection. Yet plumbing is expensive and unreliable. Pipes freeze, boilers fail, and drains occasionally remind everyone where the water has gone. Progress has entered the house, but it still needs supervision. Without a fitted bathroom, a tin, copper, or wooden tub is carried into a bedroom or kitchen. Water is heated in pots, hauled in buckets, and poured in gradually. By the time there is enough to sit in, the first water has begun to cool. You lower yourself carefully while someone nearby calculates how many journeys will be needed to empty it afterward. A bath is relaxing only if you are the person inside it. For everyone else, it is freight transport. In a crowded tenement, a tap may serve an entire floor, or water may come from a pump in the yard. You carry it upstairs in pails because spilling it means repeating the journey. Families wash in basins in the same room where they cook, work, and sleep. A curtain, turned chair, or collective agreement not to look provides what privacy can be arranged. During winter, exposed skin meets cold air briefly and with mutual hostility. Laundry makes the problem larger. Water must be carried, heated, mixed with soap, and used to scrub clothing by hand. Heavy garments are wrung out and hung across rooms or yards, where they collect whatever soot the city has thoughtfully supplied. In wealthy houses, laundresses perform this exhausting work. In poorer homes, women fit it around cooking, childcare, paid labour, and the unreasonable expectation that Monday should somehow contain more hours. At last, you dry yourself with a towel that may be clean, coarse, and entirely uninterested in softness. You dress quickly before the room steals back the warmth. Your hair is arranged, your collar is fastened, and the visible portions of you now suggest health, order, and excellent habits. Nobody needs to know how many buckets were involved. Respectability has been washed, dried, and buttoned securely into place. It is time to get dressed, and the Gilded Age does not believe the human body should simply be allowed to appear in public without extensive architectural correction. If you are a fashionable woman, layers begin with a chemise and drawers, followed by a corset, stockings, petticoats, a bustle or support structure, and a fitted dress containing enough hooks, buttons, pleats, and concealed engineering to concern a bridge inspector. The fashionable silhouette shifts throughout the decade, but comfort rarely receives a vote. Men face fewer layers, though stiff collars, waistcoats, wool suits, polished boots, and carefully managed facial hair still turn dressing into a serious declaration of intent. Working people wear simpler, sturdier clothes, repeatedly patched and brushed rather than casually replaced. Clothing announces your class, occupation, income, morality, and possibly your mother's opinion of you before you have spoken a word. You are now dressed for the day. Breathing will be handled separately. For a wealthy woman, dressing is rarely a solitary activity. A maid helps arrange the layers, fasten the buttons, tighten the laces, and locate whichever hook has disappeared into the fabric despite having been clearly visible several seconds earlier. Dresses often close at the back, ensuring that independence remains a charming theory rather than a practical feature of the garment. The corset goes on firmly, though not every woman is laced into the impossible dimensions shown in caricatures. Its purpose is to support the torso and create the fashionable shape beneath the dress. During the 1880s, that shape changes noticeably. The bustle returns with confidence early in the decade, projecting the skirt behind you through pads, wire frames, or structured supports. By the middle of the decade, the fashionable rear silhouette can become so pronounced that sitting down requires planning, balance, and a chair willing to cooperate. Over this structure go petticoats and the dress itself, often made from wool, silk, cotton, or combinations of fabrics depending on the season and your income. The bodice is close-fitting. Sleeves restrict the shoulders. Trimming gathers around the skirt in pleats, ribbons, lace, fringe, or drapery, all of which looks elegant, while increasing the number of places a door handle can attack you. Then come gloves, jewellery, a hat, and outdoor garments. A respectable woman does not simply wander into the street with uncovered hands and an unprotected head as though society has suspended operations. Hats are decorated with ribbons, flowers, feathers, and occasionally enough bird life to suggest a small natural history collection has landed above the forehead. There are women who object to all this. Dress reformers argue that tight corsets, heavy skirts, and restrictive clothing damage health and limit movement. Some support divided skirts or looser garments. Others promote simpler underclothing. Their ideas receive serious discussion and predictable mockery, because society is always fascinated by improved comfort until someone is seen enjoying it. Men's clothing appears more straightforward, but it has its own disciplines. A respectable gentleman wears a shirt, drawers, trousers, waistcoat, coat, collar, necktie, socks, and boots or shoes. The collar may be detachable, starched to remarkable stiffness, and sharp enough around the edges to discourage sudden movement. Some men wear celluloid collars, which resist stains but can become unpleasantly hot and are made from material that is unfortunately flammable. Fashion has solved laundry by introducing fire. The suit must fit well, the boots must shine, the hat must suit the hour and occasion. Facial hair requires attention, whether you favour side whiskers, a beard, or a moustache large enough to arrive in a room moments before the rest of you. Pomades and oils keep hair disciplined. A gentleman may pretend all of this has happened naturally, which is the masculine equivalent of claiming a railway assembled itself. Working people dress differently because clothing must survive labour rather than conversation. Factory workers, farmhands, laundresses, domestic servants, miners, clerks, and shop assistants choose garments according to durability, cost, and whatever their employer considers respectable. Women often wear plain dresses protected by aprons. Men wear sturdy trousers, shirts, braces, jackets, and caps. Loose fabric near machinery is dangerous, though safety advice competes constantly with heat, convenience, and the fact that nobody has supplied a better uniform. Clothing is expensive enough that garments are repaired repeatedly. Sleeves are turned, hems are let down as children grow. Coats are brushed, aired, patched, passed between siblings, and eventually cut into smaller garments or cleaning cloths. A worn piece of clothing does not leave the household merely because it has become unattractive. It is expected to continue serving until it has lost all structural ambition. At last, every button is secured and every layer is in place. You stand upright because the corset, collar, tailoring, and weight of social expectation have reached a unanimous decision about your posture. You are dressed, presentable, and prepared to meet the world. The world will know your place immediately, which saves everyone the inconvenience of asking. It is breakfast, and the good news is that food exists. The less reassuring news is that your access to it depends heavily on where you woke up. In a wealthy home, the table may hold eggs, chops, fish, rolls, fruit, coffee, and silver dishes polished to such a brightness that breakfast can see its own reflection. The meal arrives through the work of cooks, maids, deliverymen, grocers, farmers, and railway workers, none of whom are invited to sit down. In a working household, breakfast may be bread, porridge, potatoes, weak coffee, or yesterday's leftovers reheated with optimism. Children eat quickly. Adults calculate whether there is enough for supper. Milk may have been watered. Flour may have been adulterated. Meat may be entering a stage of its career that no one wishes to discuss. You eat what is available because employment begins on time, even when digestion has concerns. In the wealthier parts of town, breakfast is often served in a dedicated room, furnished specifically for the serious business of beginning the day without appearing hungry. The curtains are open, the coal fire is burning, newspapers wait beside the plates, folded so that the gentleman of the house can read about corruption in government, while consuming food purchased through several layers of commercial influence. A servant pours the coffee and stands nearby with the special stillness expected of someone who has already been awake for hours. The family helps itself from covered dishes or receives plates according to the customs of the household. Steak, ham, sausages, kidneys, eggs, fried potatoes, hot rolls, preserves, and fish may all appear. Breakfast can be substantial because dinner will not be served until evening, and because wealthy Americans have recently discovered that prosperity should be demonstrated at every possible meal. The ingredients have travelled farther than those eaten by earlier generations. Railways carry meat, grain, fruit and dairy products toward expanding cities. Refrigerated railway cars are improving the movement of dressed beef over long distances, allowing urban diners to eat food produced hundreds of miles away without meeting the animal or the man who was injured loading it. Fresh fruit is available in season, while canned goods and preserves extend choice through winter. Coffee arrives through international trade, sugar through an economic system with a long and brutal history, and silver serving pieces through the quiet conviction that a boiled egg tastes better when approached by a footman. In a working-class kitchen, the scene is smaller and considerably faster. The stove may heat the room while cooking porridge or frying potatoes in leftover fat. Bread is sliced carefully. Coffee may be weak, stretched with additional water, chicory, or whatever gives the cup enough colour to maintain morale. Children eat standing up or crowded around a table, also used for sewing, washing, homework, and the household's ongoing discussion about money. Leftovers are valuable. Cold potatoes become fried potatoes. Stale bread is softened in milk, toasted, or added to a pudding later. A small piece of meat flavours a larger dish rather than serving as the centre of it. Nothing is wasted casually because waste is a luxury, and the rubbish bin has not yet become the final resting place of half a refrigerator. Food quality varies sharply. Commercial production is growing faster than public oversight. Milk dealers may dilute milk with water, and the water may come from sources best approached with prayer. Some urban milk comes from cows kept near distilleries and fed waste mash, producing poor quality milk that can be sold cheaply to families with few alternatives. Flour, spices, coffee, candy, and other foods may be mixed with cheaper substances to increase profit. Laws exist in some places, but enforcement is inconsistent, laboratory testing is limited, and manufacturers are not yet burdened by the modern habit of listing ingredients in print large enough for a suspicious adult to read. You judge food through smell, appearance, reputation, and the confidence of the person selling it. This system works beautifully for anyone selling questionable food with excellent posture. Rural households may produce much of what they eat, though this does not make breakfast effortless. Eggs must be gathered, cows milked, grain milled, meat preserved, fruit canned, and fires maintained. Farm breakfasts can be generous during prosperous seasons and painfully plain when harvests fail or debts rise. By now, the clock is advancing. The factory whistle will not wait. The office will not wait. The schoolroom, shop counter, laundry, stable, and kitchen have already made their expectations clear. You finish what is on your plate, drink the last of the coffee, and stand. Somewhere across the city, another family is doing the same with an entirely different meal. Breakfast has prepared you for the day. Whether it has also poisoned you remains an afternoon question. Before you finish breakfast, the servants in a prosperous household have already completed enough work to qualify as an entire morning. The cook has managed coal ranges, heavy pots, deliveries, and a kitchen temperature that alternates between cellar cold and volcanic. Housemaids have emptied chambers, carried water, swept ash, beaten rugs, lit fires, and attempted to remove soot from a city determined to manufacture more of it. A lady's maid has dressed her employer. A valet has prepared another man's shirt front with the solemnity of a treaty negotiation. Domestic service is one of the largest fields of employment for women, particularly young women who have left farms or immigrant households. They live inside someone else's home, follow someone else's schedule, and are expected to make labour disappear. Comfort, in the Gilded Age, is often simply exhaustion occurring behind a closed door. The day may have begun at 5 a.m, sometimes earlier, when the kitchen maid or lowest-ranking housemaid rises in a small attic or basement room and dresses in the dark. Servants' bedrooms are usually plain, cold, and located wherever the architect found space after completing the rooms intended to impress visitors. A narrow bed, a washstand, a peg for clothing, and perhaps a shared room with another servant are considered adequate. The family sleeps beneath embroidered covers. The staff sleeps beneath the roof, where winter wind arrives with fewer social restrictions. Before anyone upstairs wakes, fires must be rebuilt. Grates are cleared, ashes carried away, coal brought in, and kindling arranged. Each fireplace creates warmth for one room and work for someone else. In a mansion containing dozens of fireplaces, the morning coal operation resembles a private mining industry conducted on staircases. Then come the chamber pots. These are removed discreetly, emptied, cleaned, and returned without comment. The Gilded Age values delicacy, particularly when someone else is carrying the evidence downstairs. The cook commands the kitchen, and command is necessary because breakfast does not organize itself. Bread must be sliced, coffee must be ground and boiled, meat must be trimmed, eggs must be timed. Deliveries arrive through the servants' entrance, where grocers, butchers, milkmen, fishmongers and ice dealers exchange goods with staff who must inspect quality without delaying the household schedule. The coal range radiates punishing heat. Pots are made of iron and weigh enough to qualify as exercise equipment. Water is carried by hand unless the house has modern plumbing, and even then the supply may be unreliable. The cook works with knives, boiling liquids, open flames, and an employer who may send back the sauce because it has failed to express refinement. Above stairs, housemaids move quickly through bedrooms and drawing rooms. Beds are aired and remade, curtains are opened, carpets are swept, furniture is dusted, brass is polished. Silver is cleaned until it shines with the moral authority of money. Every surface must appear untouched, even though maintaining that appearance requires constant touching. Servants operate through bells. A bell board in the pantry or servants' hall indicates which room is calling. One bell means the drawing room, another means a bedroom. Another may summon someone to discover that a cushion requires moving 3 inches to the left. A footman answers doors, carries trays, delivers notes, assists at meals, and stands in decorative silence when guests are present. Height and appearance can influence his wages because wealthy households consider an impressive footman part employee and part furniture. A butler supervises the male staff, guards the wine cellar and silver, and maintains the expression of a man who has witnessed everything and intends to mention nothing. Female servants usually receive lower wages than male servants, even when their work is equally exhausting. They may also have fewer opportunities to leave the house, stricter rules, and limited privacy. Employers can impose curfews, regulate visitors, inspect clothing, and dismiss a servant with little notice. A lost position may also mean losing your room and meals immediately, which gives workplace criticism unusual force. Yet service can offer steady wages, food, shelter, and a path away from rural poverty or overcrowded family homes. Some servants save money, change employers for better conditions, marry, or rise through the household ranks. A skilled cook, housekeeper, butler, valet, or lady's maid may hold considerable authority within the domestic world. They know how the house functions because they are the ones functioning it. By the time the family finishes breakfast, the servants have prepared rooms, managed fires, served food, answered bells, and quietly prevented several domestic systems from collapsing. The table looks effortless, the silver gleams, the coffee is hot. This is what wealthy people mean when they say the house runs itself. Now you step outside, and the city immediately introduces itself through sound and smell. Hooves strike cobblestones, wagon wheels rattle, street vendors call. Factory whistles answer one another across the rooftops. Elevated trains grind overhead in parts of New York, dropping cinders and noise onto anyone beneath them. And then there are the horses. Thousands of them pull omnibuses, private carriages, delivery carts, fire engines, hearses, and almost everything else that moves. They require stables, feed, water, blacksmiths, drivers, cleaners, and an astonishing amount of daily waste removal. The roads are slippery when wet, dusty when dry, and fragrant in every season. Crossing the street requires timing, confidence, and an acceptance that your shoes may never emotionally recover. The city is modern, energetic, and moving forward. It is also producing several million pounds of manure with no long-term strategy. The horse is the engine of the 1880s city. It delivers your bread, carries your furniture, pulls the omnibus, transports the wealthy, removes the dead, and races toward burning buildings with a brass bell clanging above its head. Nearly every urban service depends on an animal that must eat, rest, drink, and eventually stop in the middle of traffic for personal reasons. A single horse can produce many pounds of manure each day, along with several gallons of urine. Multiply this by the enormous number of horses working in a major city, and the street becomes less a road than an ongoing agricultural experiment. Sweepers and sanitation workers remove what they can. Stable owners sell some manure as fertilizer. Rain carries the rest into gutters, where it joins household waste, spoiled food, ashes, mud, and anything else the neighbourhood has decided it no longer wishes to own. In dry weather, the manure crumbles beneath wheels and hooves. It rises into the air as dust and settles on clothing, shop displays, window ledges, and the bread being carried home beneath a cloth that suddenly seems far too optimistic. In wet weather, it becomes a dark paste that splashes onto hems and trousers with excellent aim. You walk carefully near the curb, though the curb itself is not always safe. Horses can startle. Wagons turn abruptly. Drivers shout warnings that arrive only slightly before the vehicle. Street crossings do not come with painted lines, electronic signals, or a small illuminated figure assuring you that civilization has paused on your behalf. You look in several directions, judge the speed of approaching traffic, and step forward with the confidence of someone who has recently reviewed their will. The wealthier citizens travel above much of this in private carriages. The carriage body is polished, the driver sits high at the front, and the passengers remain protected from the worst of the street by glass, upholstery, and money. Omnibuses carry ordinary travellers along established routes, though they can be crowded, slow, and intimate in a way nobody requested. You climb aboard, find a narrow place to sit, and spend the journey with several strangers, damp coats, shopping parcels, and at least one person who appears to have brought an entire onion-based lunch. Horse-drawn streetcars run on rails, making the ride smoother and allowing one or two horses to pull more passengers. The system is efficient until a wagon blocks the track, a horse refuses to cooperate, or winter freezes the rails. Progress continues, but only at the speed of the animal currently attached to it. Above certain New York avenues, elevated steam trains provide a faster and noisier alternative. The iron structure throws shadows across the street. Trains roar overhead, shaking windows and dropping smoke, sparks, soot, and occasional drips onto pedestrians below. Residents living beside the tracks experience every passing train as a personal announcement. Conversations pause, crockery trembles, sleep becomes something attempted between timetables. The streets are also crowded with people working directly from the pavement. Vendors sell fruit, vegetables, newspapers, flowers, hot corn, chestnuts, and other inexpensive goods. Bootblacks call for customers. Messengers hurry between offices. Newsboys shout headlines. Labourers unload barrels and crates while shopkeepers sweep the same dust away from their doors that will return before lunch. The noise never settles into one sound. It layers itself. Iron wheels grind against stone. Horses snort and stamp. Drivers curse. Bells ring. Machinery hums behind factory walls. Steam escapes in sudden bursts. Somewhere, a piano plays through an open window, bravely attempting culture against an omnibus. By the time you reach the next block, your boots are marked, your coat has collected soot, and the city has shouted directly into both ears. You have entered the most advanced urban civilization America has yet produced. Watch your step. Turn away from the broad avenues and enter a tenement district, where the Gilded Age becomes considerably less gilded. You climb a narrow staircase worn smooth by hundreds of feet. The hallway is dim even in daylight. Behind thin doors, families cook, sew, sleep, argue, nurse infants, take in boarders, and perform paid work in rooms never designed for so many bodies. Ventilation may come through a window facing a cramped air shaft that mainly circulates noise and cooking smells from one apartment to another. Toilets may be shared by numerous households and located in the yard. Water must be carried. Privacy is largely theoretical. Rent consumes a painful portion of each wage, but the city is full of newcomers, and landlords understand supply and demand with remarkable moral flexibility. You can hear 3 languages through the wall and someone coughing below. The building is alive before sunrise because nobody inside can afford a gentle morning. The first sounds come from the kitchen corner, although calling it a kitchen is generous. A small stove stands beside a table, a wash basin, and perhaps a shelf of chipped cups. It heats the room, cooks the food, dries the laundry, and threatens to set the building on fire with equal dedication. Someone strikes a match. Coal catches. A baby wakes immediately, demonstrating the excellent timing for which babies have always been known. You may share 3 rooms with 6, 8, or 10 people. Beds are used in shifts when boarders work different hours. Children sleep together. A lodger occupies a corner behind a curtain because his weekly payment helps cover the rent. The curtain creates privacy in the same way a folded newspaper creates a wall. Everyone hears every cough, whisper, argument, and attempt to dress. In older tenements, interior rooms may have no direct window at all. Later building laws require improvements such as windows opening onto air shafts, but the shafts are narrow and quickly become vertical channels for heat, rubbish, voices, and smells. Someone fries onions several floors below, and the entire building receives the news. A child cries above you. A sewing machine begins next door. Water may come from a shared tap in the hall or courtyard. You carry it in buckets for washing, cooking, and cleaning. If the tap freezes, breaks, or runs dry, the whole building develops a common interest very quickly. Toilets in the yard serve many families and are unpleasant in summer, freezing in winter, and rarely approached with optimism. Home is also a workplace. Garment workers sew shirts, trousers, collars, or decorative pieces by the item, often for contractors who deliver bundles and collect the finished work. The entire family may help. Fingers move rapidly in poor light while fabric dust hangs in the air. Payment is low, deadlines are strict, and the employer avoids the cost of a factory by allowing your bedroom to become one. Yet the tenement is not only misery packed into brick. Neighbours exchange food, watch children, lend coins, translate letters, share news of jobs, and guide new arrivals through a city that rarely pauses to explain itself. Religious congregations, mutual aid societies, unions, clubs, and local shops grow around these crowded blocks. You hear familiar songs through open windows and smell bread made the way it was made in the country your family left behind. By now, adults are dressing for work, children are being sent on errands, and someone is wrapping breakfast in paper. The hallway fills with footsteps, doors open and close. The staircase becomes a current carrying everyone toward factories, shops, docks, kitchens, and street corners. You step outside with the others into the noise of the city. Behind you, the tenement remains awake. It has no quiet setting. It is time for work, and the factory whistle has no interest in whether you slept well. You enter a mill, foundry, packing plant, garment shop, or machine works where the air is thick with fibres, smoke, heat, oil, metal dust, or all of them at once. The machinery is fast, exposed, and designed before anyone thought seriously about protecting the person standing beside it. Belts turn overhead, shafts spin, floors shake. A moment of distraction can cost fingers, hair, or worse. And compensation for injury depends largely on whether your employer feels unexpectedly charitable. The working day may last 10, 12, or more hours, 6 days a week. You are paid by the hour, the piece, or the opinion of a foreman who believes encouragement sounds best when shouted. Industrial America is producing goods at astonishing speed. It has simply included you among the consumable materials. The whistle sounds before the shift begins, giving you enough time to reach your station but not enough time to reconsider your life. Workers stream through the gates carrying lunch pails, shawls, caps, and the private hope that today will be uneventful. At the entrance, a clock records your arrival. A few minutes late may mean lost wages. Repeated lateness may mean dismissal. The machine does not need to understand your reasons. Neither does the company. Inside, conversation becomes difficult almost immediately. In a textile mill, rows of looms beat and clatter with such force that speech turns into gestures and shouted fragments. Cotton or wool fibres float in the warm air and settle in your hair, throat, and lungs. Windows may be kept closed to maintain the humidity needed for the thread, which is excellent news for production and less excellent news for breathing. In a foundry, furnaces glow and metal moves in dangerous liquid streams. Heat presses against your face while sparks jump from tools and moulds. In a machine shop, lathes, drills, gears, and cutting equipment operate without the guards that later generations will consider obvious. Your sleeves must remain close. Your attention must remain absolute. One loose cuff can turn a normal morning into a lesson the entire floor remembers. The factory is organized around speed. Each worker performs a limited task repeatedly, allowing goods to be produced faster and more cheaply. You tighten the same fitting, guide the same cloth, trim the same edge, or pack the same object hundreds of times. Skill is still required, but the system is designed so that the process belongs increasingly to the company rather than to the person performing it. Foremen watch the line, enforce discipline, and decide whether your work is acceptable. Some are experienced workers who understand the strain. Others discover that a raised voice is cheaper than good management. Talking may be forbidden. Sitting may be impossible. Trips to the toilet are monitored because time away from the machine is considered lost production, while time lost to exhaustion is apparently a personal hobby. The hours move slowly despite the speed of everything around you. Your shoulders ache, your fingers become stiff, the noise settles inside your head until silence begins to feel imaginary. Lunch may last only long enough to eat bread, cheese, pie, or cold leftovers beside your station or in a yard outside. Then the whistle calls you back before your body has mistaken the pause for mercy. Accidents are common. A belt snaps, a tool slips, a hand reaches too close. Employers may blame carelessness even when the machinery is poorly maintained and the pace unreasonable. Workers injured on the job have few legal protections and may receive nothing beyond a collection taken by fellow employees. If you cannot work, another person is waiting outside the gate. This dependence gives the employer enormous power. Wages can be cut. Hours can be extended. Workers can be dismissed for joining a union or complaining about conditions. Yet employees still organise, share information, slow production, walk out, and demand change. The factory may own the whistle, but it does not completely own the people who answer it. At last, another blast marks the end of the shift. Machines slow, belts stop, and the sudden reduction in noise feels almost physical. You step outside with ringing ears, sore feet, and dust caught deep in your clothing. The factory has produced cloth, tools, furniture, cans, shoes, or machinery. It has also produced a version of you that requires several quiet minutes before speaking. If you are a child in the 1880s, nobody assumes your primary occupation should be enjoying childhood. You may work in a textile mill, coal breaker, cannery, glassworks, tobacco factory, street trade, farm, or household workshop. Small hands reach into machinery more easily. Small bodies fit into narrow spaces. Small wages appeal strongly to employers who have recently discovered efficiency. You carry bundles, sort coal, change bobbins, sell newspapers, shine shoes, or help support a family whose adult wages do not cover rent and food. Schooling exists and is expanding, but attendance laws vary, enforcement is uneven, and hunger has a persuasive curriculum. Reformers photograph, investigate, publish, and protest. Though comprehensive federal restrictions remain far in the future, you learn responsibility early. You also learn that when an adult says work builds character, the work is usually yours. Your day may begin before sunrise, when an older sibling shakes you awake in a room where several people are still sleeping. You dress quickly in clothes already worn hard by another child, and eat whatever breakfast can be spared. Then you walk to work carrying a lunch pail that contains bread, perhaps a boiled potato, and the faint hope that nobody will take it. In a textile mill, you may work as a bobbin changer or doffer. You move between rows of spinning machinery, replacing full bobbins with empty ones, while belts and shafts continue moving around you. The air is warm and filled with lint. Your feet ache from standing, but stopping slows production, and slowing production attracts the foreman. The machinery is not adjusted for your height. This is considered your problem. In coal regions, breaker boys sit above chutes and pick slate from pieces of coal as they rattle past. Black dust settles into your hair, clothing, eyes, and lungs. Your fingers become cracked and stained. Sharp stones cut your hands. The noise is constant, and the winter air can be bitterly cold inside buildings that exist mainly to separate valuable fuel from everything the mine owner cannot sell. In a glassworks, you carry moulds or assist near furnaces hot enough to make the air shimmer. In a cannery, you clean, sort, peel, and pack food through long seasonal shifts. In a cigar workshop or tenement room, you strip tobacco leaves or roll products beside adults, breathing the heavy smell for hours. On a farm, your duties may include feeding animals, carrying water, gathering crops, watching younger children, and performing whatever task becomes urgent before anyone remembers your age. Street work offers more independence and less protection. You sell newspapers, flowers, matches, fruit, or small household items. You shine boots outside hotels and railway stations. You carry messages through traffic and weather. Newsboys purchase their papers and must sell enough copies to recover the cost. So every unsold bundle represents money lost rather than an employer's concern. The public often treats working children as picturesque evidence of youthful enterprise. A small boy shouting headlines on a street corner looks energetic and determined from a passing carriage. He looks rather different when rain has soaked through his coat, and he has not sold enough papers to eat. School is available to many children, and public education is expanding rapidly, but regular attendance depends on state law, local enforcement, family income, and whether your labour is needed at home. Some children attend school part of the year and work during harvest or busy factory seasons. Others attend evening classes after a full shift, attempting arithmetic while their bodies quietly prepare to fall asleep at the desk. Families do not always send children to work because they are indifferent. Often they send them because rent is due, food costs money, and one adult wage is not enough. A child's earnings may be small, but several small wages gathered together can keep a household from eviction. Reformers are beginning to expose the dangers. Journalists, clergy, union organisers, and charitable groups describe long hours, injuries, and lost education. Yet manufacturers argue that restrictions will hurt business or interfere with family choice, which sounds more dignified than saying cheap labour is extremely convenient. When your shift ends, you return home carrying dust, soreness, and perhaps a few coins for the household. There may still be water to fetch, siblings to mind, or sewing to finish. You are 10 years old. Fortunately, the Gilded Age has already prepared you for middle management. Perhaps you are fortunate enough to work in an office, where the machinery is less likely to remove a limb but entirely capable of consuming your spirit. You sit at a wooden desk under gaslight or uncertain daylight, copying figures into ledgers, writing letters by hand, filing correspondence, and performing calculations without an electronic device politely correcting you. Typewriters are becoming more common, bringing new clerical jobs, particularly for women, along with a rhythmic clatter that makes the modern open-plan office seem almost reflective. Telephones appear in some businesses, though many employers still regard them as expensive furniture for urgent shouting. Elevators are transforming tall buildings, but stepping into one requires faith in cables, brakes, and a young operator who may have been awake since dawn. The office represents clean, respectable employment. Your cuffs remain white, your nerves do not. Your day begins beneath a clock that seems unusually interested in your personal discipline. You remove your coat, sit at a desk arranged in rows with others, and open a ledger large enough to contain the financial anxieties of an entire railway company. The pages are ruled by hand or printed with columns for names, dates, payments, debts, shipments, and whatever else the business has decided must be recorded forever. Everything is written in ink. This means every mistake carries ceremony. You dip the pen, shake away the excess, and form each letter carefully. A blot can ruin a page. A copied figure placed in the wrong column can send a shipment to Cincinnati, delay a payment in Boston, or cause a superior to stand beside your chair breathing through his nose. Erasers exist for pencil, but ink requires scraping, blotting, rewriting, or quietly hoping nobody audits that particular account before retirement. Copying letters is a major part of office life. Before practical copying machines, important correspondence may be duplicated by hand or with devices such as letterpress copying books, which transfer damp ink onto thin pages. You write the original, press it into the book, and pray the result is legible. The process is modern, efficient, and still dependent on whether you use too much water. The typewriter changes this rhythm. Machines such as the Remington models are appearing in commercial offices, producing neat, uniform text faster than most people can write. The keys strike an inked ribbon against paper with a hard mechanical snap. Early operators must learn a keyboard layout that is not arranged alphabetically, a decision future generations will accept without understanding and then defend with surprising emotion. Women are increasingly hired as typists and stenographers because employers discover that they can perform skilled clerical work efficiently and can also be paid less than men. This is presented as an exciting new professional opportunity, which it is, while the second half of the arrangement is mentioned less enthusiastically. A female office worker must dress respectably, behave modestly, and endure close supervision in a workplace that may still regard her presence as slightly experimental. She may take dictation, type letters, manage files, answer telephone calls, and perform enough organizational labor to keep several men appearing competent. Promotion, however, often stops at the point where authority begins. The telephone introduces a new kind of interruption. A bell rings suddenly. You lift the receiver and speak into a separate mouthpiece mounted on the wall or desk. The connection crackles. The caller sounds distant, offended, or both. You ask the operator to connect you, repeat yourself several times, and eventually learn that the urgent message could have been written in one sentence. The office itself is not necessarily comfortable. Gas lights consume oxygen and add heat. Windows provide ventilation but also admit soot, street noise, and weather. In summer, the room becomes close and damp. In winter, the stove or radiator heats one side of the office while leaving the other in a climate suitable for preserving documents. At midday, clerks eat quickly at nearby lunch counters or from food carried in paper. Then they return to ledgers, invoices, correspondence, and the constant arithmetic of commerce. Calculations are done by hand, sometimes assisted by mechanical adding machines. A strong head for figures is valuable. A weak one is discovered publicly. When the office finally closes, you sand or blot the last page, lock documents into cabinets, and place the pen carefully beside the inkwell. Your hands are clean enough, your collar remains respectable, and no machine has attempted to pull you into its gears. You leave with tired eyes and a headache produced entirely by numbers. Industrial progress has spared your fingers. It has chosen your concentration instead. Let's talk about women, because the Gilded Age is opening doors while keeping one foot firmly against them. More women are entering paid work as teachers, typists, telephone operators, shop assistants, factory workers, domestic servants, and nurses. Women's colleges are growing. Reform clubs and suffrage organizations are gaining strength. In some states, married women have secured greater control over property and earnings than earlier generations possessed. Yet social expectations remain narrow, wages remain lower, and respectability must be managed with exhausting precision. A middle-class woman may be praised for education, as long as it does not make her intimidating at dinner. A working woman may be expected to earn money and still complete unpaid domestic labor afterward. You are told that femininity is delicate while being handed a schedule that would flatten a railway foreman. Progress has begun, although it has been asked to enter through the side door. If you are an unmarried middle-class woman, teaching is one of the most respectable forms of paid employment available to you. Schools need instructors, particularly as public education expands, and communities are willing to place children under female supervision on the reassuring theory that women possess a natural gift for patience. This gift is expected to survive crowded classrooms, poor supplies, low wages, and several pupils who have recently discovered ink. Your position may depend on remaining unmarried. In many communities, marriage is treated as evidence that you no longer require a salary and should immediately surrender your classroom to someone still waiting for a husband. A male teacher may support a wife and family. A female teacher who acquires either is considered to have become distracted from education. Office work offers another route into the public world. Typewriters and telephones create jobs that did not exist for your mother's generation. You learn shorthand, operate unfamiliar machinery, organize correspondence, and maintain schedules for businessmen who may later describe themselves as entirely self-made. The work is cleaner than factory labor and generally more respectable than domestic service, but the salary is often calculated according to the useful assumption that a woman's income is merely supplementary. This assumption survives even when your wage is paying the rent. In department stores, you stand behind counters displaying gloves, ribbons, perfumes, stationery, and household goods. You must remain polite while customers examine merchandise, question prices, and occasionally behave as though purchasing a handkerchief grants temporary authority over your soul. Sitting may be forbidden during working hours. Employers believe standing creates a more attentive appearance, particularly when the person required to stand is someone else. Telephone operators work at switchboards, connecting calls through a forest of cords and sockets. Companies often prefer young women because their voices are considered more pleasant and their behavior easier to discipline. You sit beneath strict supervision, repeating numbers, making connections, and overhearing fragments of private life while being expected to possess no curiosity whatsoever. One wrong plug sends a businessman's urgent call to a dentist, which may be the most useful conversation he has all day. For working-class women, the choices are harder and the labour more physical. You may sew garments by the piece, wash other families' clothing, prepare food, clean offices, take in boarders, work in a mill, or enter domestic service. The shift does not necessarily end when you return home. Meals still need cooking, children still require attention, clothing must be mended, water must be carried. The home politely waits all day for you to begin your second occupation. Education is expanding the horizon. Institutions such as Vassar, Wellesley, and Smith offer advanced study to women, while coeducational colleges admit female students in growing numbers. A college woman may study literature, mathematics, science, philosophy, or history, alarming observers who worry that excessive learning will damage her health, fertility, or ability to admire an average man's opinions. The educated woman becomes a familiar figure in public debate, sometimes described as the new woman. She rides bicycles, seeks professional work, joins clubs, supports reform, and appears dangerously capable of forming conclusions without assistance. Critics portray her as unfeminine. Supporters regard her as evidence that femininity has been operating under unnecessary restrictions. Women's clubs organise lectures, libraries, charitable projects, sanitation campaigns, and educational programs. Black women establish their own clubs and reform networks, confronting both racism and sexism while building schools, community services, and political organisations. Temperance groups draw enormous female participation because alcohol abuse is not merely a moral concern. It can mean lost wages, violence, and a household legally controlled by the man spending the money. The suffrage movement continues pressing for voting rights, though progress is uneven and resistance remains strong. Women can already vote in certain Western territories and states, but nationwide suffrage is still decades away. You may organise meetings, circulate petitions, deliver speeches, and obey laws created entirely by voters who have agreed your political judgment is best kept theoretical. Still, the boundaries are moving, slowly, unevenly, and with a great deal of public concern, but they are moving. You step into the classroom, office, hospital, shop, meeting hall, or factory and take your place. Society remains uncertain whether you belong there. Fortunately, you are too busy doing the work to wait for it to decide. By late morning, you enter a department store, one of the great new temples of urban consumption. Buildings such as Macy's in New York and Marshall Field's in Chicago gather clothing, furniture, toys, fabrics, household goods, cosmetics, and temptation beneath one roof. Glass display windows turn shopping into public theatre. Elevators carry customers between floors. Pneumatic tubes and cash systems move money through the building with visible modern efficiency. For middle-class women, the department store offers a respectable public place to browse, meet friends, dine, and spend money without a male escort hovering beside the gloves. For clerks, however, the glamour looks different. They stand for long hours, follow strict rules, smile at difficult customers, and earn modest wages beneath displays celebrating abundance. You can buy almost anything here, including the feeling that your current life requires immediate replacement. The first thing you notice is the scale. Earlier shops tended to specialise. You visited one place for fabric, another for shoes, another for furniture, and perhaps several more before discovering that nobody had the particular ribbon you wanted. The department store gathers these separate errands into one enormous building and then surrounds them with things you did not know you needed until they were arranged beneath flattering light. The entrance is designed to impress you. Large windows display dressed mannequins, imported fabrics, silverware, toys, and complete domestic scenes in which every chair appears comfortable and no child has ever spilled anything. The display does not merely show goods, it presents a possible life. In that life, your curtains match, your table is properly laid, and your family has stopped placing wet boots beside the stove. Inside, counters stretch across the floor beneath signs marking departments. Gloves sit in tidy rows, bolts of fabric rise behind clerks, perfume bottles catch the light. Ready-made clothing is becoming increasingly important, allowing you to purchase garments in standard sizes rather than having everything sewn at home or made by a dressmaker. The fit may not be perfect, but neither is your schedule. Prices are often clearly marked, a practice that removes some of the bargaining common in smaller shops. This gives the store an air of fairness and order. You pay the same price as the customer before you, unless a sale has begun 3 minutes later, in which case you spend the rest of the afternoon taking it personally. Advertising brings you through the doors. Newspapers announce seasonal goods, new fashions, reduced prices, and special displays with a confidence suggesting that failing to purchase a winter coat this week may damage the national economy. Illustrated catalogues and notices expand the store's influence beyond the building itself. Shopping is no longer merely the act of obtaining an object. It is entertainment, education, and a gentle reminder that your present possessions have become embarrassing. The store also offers practical comforts. There may be waiting rooms, writing desks, restaurants, tea rooms, and public lavatories, all important in a city where respectable women have limited places to rest outside the home. You can meet a friend, eat luncheon, examine new fashions, and spend several hours in public without appearing idle or improper. Consumption has provided a socially acceptable reason to leave the house. Commerce is pleased to support your independence, provided you bring a purse. Mechanical systems add to the spectacle. Elevators carry you upward without stairs, operated by an attendant who controls the machinery and announces each floor. Cash may travel from counters to a central office through pneumatic tubes, wire systems, or small carriers that shoot overhead. You hand over money, and it vanishes into the building before returning with change and a receipt. The process is efficient, theatrical, and just complicated enough to make buying stockings feel like participating in modern engineering. Behind the counters, the experience is less magical. Clerks may work long days while standing continuously. They must dress neatly, know the merchandise, prevent theft, satisfy supervisors, and remain pleasant to customers who unfold 12 items and purchase none. Female clerks earn wages that can barely cover respectable lodging, food, and clothing. Their appearance must suggest prosperity while their income quietly disagrees. You move from one department to another, touching fabric, comparing prices, and imagining improvements to rooms that seemed entirely adequate this morning. By the time you leave, you are carrying a parcel, a receipt, and a newly developed concern about your curtains. The department store has not simply sold you an object. It has shown you a better life and allowed you to purchase one small piece of it. Communication is changing, although it has not yet become quiet. The telegraph already allows news and business messages to cross enormous distances in minutes, provided the message is brief, the operator accurate, and everyone involved understands that punctuation costs money. The telephone is spreading through offices and wealthy homes after its invention in the previous decade. Early instruments are awkward, connections unreliable, and callers uncertain about how loudly one must speak into the device to reach another part of town. The answer, according to many users, is extremely loudly. Human operators connect calls manually, listening for requests and occasionally hearing more than the callers intended. Letters remain essential, delivered multiple times a day in major cities, while newspapers carry gossip, financial news, crime, advertisements, and political abuse to a rapidly growing readership. You now live in an age of instant communication. A reply may arrive in only several hours, which everyone considers alarmingly fast. If you need to send urgent news across the country, you visit a telegraph office and compose a message with the emotional restraint of someone paying by the word. There is no room for a gentle introduction, a thoughtful explanation, or the sentence, "I hope this message finds you well." The message must find them quickly and then stop costing you money. You write something like, "Arriving Tuesday, stop prepare, room stop, do not inform, aunt stop." The word stop is commonly used to mark the end of a sentence, particularly in formal or international telegrams. It gives every message the tone of a military order, even when you are merely asking someone to collect a parcel. A telegraph clerk counts the words, calculates the charge, and sends the message through a system of electrical signals. At the receiving office, another operator translates the code and writes or types the message onto paper. A messenger then carries it to the final address, often on foot or by bicycle. What feels immediate by 19th century standards still involves several people, 2 offices, a wire network, and a boy running through traffic. Telegrams bring business instructions, railway information, election results, market prices, births, deaths, and family emergencies. Receiving one can cause instant anxiety because ordinary affection usually travels by letter. A telegram knocking at the door suggests that something has happened quickly and is unlikely to be about a pleasant new curtain. The telephone promises something even more astonishing. You can speak to someone who is not in the room. In the 1880s, however, the experience requires patience. You lift the receiver or operate the signalling mechanism and wait for an exchange operator to answer. You provide the name or number of the person you wish to reach. The operator connects cables at a switchboard, linking your line to another one through a physical arrangement of plugs and sockets. If the person is nearby and the equipment cooperative, a voice eventually emerges. It sounds faint, crackling, and slightly supernatural. You lean toward the mouthpiece and speak slowly. The person at the other end says they cannot hear you. You repeat yourself more loudly. they still cannot hear you. Soon you are delivering private financial information to a wooden box in a voice that can be heard by everyone in the building except the intended recipient. Telephone etiquette has not yet settled. Some people answer by saying, "hello," a word that becomes strongly associated with the device. Others favour phrases such as, "are you there?" which is less a greeting than an honest technical inquiry. Alexander Graham Bell reportedly preferred ahoy, an option that would have made every business call sound as though the accounting department had gone to sea. Privacy is limited. Telephone lines may be shared, and operators must remain connected long enough to establish calls. Most operators are young women hired partly because companies consider their voices polite and their behaviour easier to manage than that of the teenage boys initially employed in some exchanges. They are expected to work quickly, remain courteous, and forget every interesting fragment they hear. For most people, letters remain the normal method of communication. You write by hand, fold the paper, place it in an envelope, address it, attach a stamp, and trust the postal system. In large cities, several deliveries may occur each day, allowing a morning invitation to receive an afternoon response. This encourages people to write brief notes about matters a later century will handle through messages sent from bed. Newspapers move information on an even larger scale. Expanding literacy, cheaper printing, telegraphic reporting, and intense competition produce pages filled with politics, disasters, crime, business, advertisements, society news, and rumours presented with varying levels of evidence. By evening you can know what happened hundreds of miles away, speak to someone across town, and receive a written reply before dinner. The world has become connected. It has also become much harder to pretend you never received the message. It is lunchtime, and America is eating with confidence unsupported by regulation. Oysters are abundant and cheap in coastal cities, sold in restaurants, saloons, markets, and street stands. Workers may eat bread, stew, sausage, pie, cheese, pickles, or whatever can be purchased quickly near the job. Businessmen take long lunches involving meat, alcohol, cigars, and discussions that will later be described as decisions of national importance. Food production is expanding rapidly, but inspection remains inconsistent. Milk can be watered or contaminated. Candy may contain unsafe colouring. Coffee can be bulked with cheaper ingredients. Canned food is convenient but not always dependable. Refrigeration is improving, yet many homes still rely on iceboxes and the personal judgment of whoever smells the meat first. You eat your lunch, wipe your mouth, and return to work. Food labels have not yet developed the confidence to tell you what you just consumed. If you work in a factory, lunch may be eaten beside the building, in a yard, or near your station while the machinery rests briefly enough to make the silence feel suspicious. You open a metal pail or paper parcel containing bread, cold potatoes, cheese, perhaps a slice of meat, and whatever remains from supper. The meal is practical, portable, and expected to survive several hours without refrigeration or complaint. Nearby, another worker has brought sausage whose condition has become a matter of faith. Nobody asks when it was made. Questions of that kind only reduce appetite, and appetite is one of the few pleasures the foreman has not yet placed on a timetable. Street vendors provide alternatives. You can buy hot corn, pretzels, fruit, soup, sandwiches, pies, or oysters prepared in several forms. Oysters appear everywhere because American coastal waters still support enormous beds, especially around New York, Baltimore, and other port cities. They are eaten raw, fried, stewed, scalloped, pickled, and folded into dishes that would surprise anyone now treating them as a luxury reserved for anniversaries. An oyster lunch can be cheap, filling, and remarkably democratic. Labourers eat them, clerks eat them. Wealthy diners eat them beneath chandeliers while discussing the superior judgment that led them to order exactly the same shellfish available from a cart outside. Oyster saloons range from modest counters to elegant establishments. You may sit on a stool, order a stew, and watch the shells opened in front of you. The oysters are fresh if the supply, storage, weather, and cellar have all behaved responsibly. These are several separate conditions, and lunch depends on every one of them. Businessmen dine differently. They enter hotels, restaurants, private clubs, or chop houses where lunch can expand into an afternoon. Beefsteak, mutton chops, fish, potatoes, bread, oysters, beer, whiskey, and cigars arrive, while contracts are discussed between mouthfuls. A commercial decision affecting hundreds of workers may be made over a meal long enough to contain 3 kinds of meat. For women working in offices or shops, respectable lunchrooms and department store restaurants are becoming more available, though choices depend on wages. A sales clerk may spend much of the day surrounded by elegant goods and then eat a small meal chosen through careful arithmetic. The store displays abundance. Her purse maintains a more conservative philosophy. Behind every lunch sits the uncertain food market. Adulteration is not a rare scandal. It is a recurring business strategy. Ground coffee can contain chicory, roasted grain, peas, or other fillers. Spices may be stretched with flour, dust, or ground shells. Brightly coloured sweets can owe their beauty to chemical dyes that have received more attention from manufacturers than physicians. Milk presents a particular danger. It may be watered to increase volume, produced by unhealthy cows, carried in dirty containers, or stored without sufficient cooling. In crowded cities, contaminated milk is especially dangerous to infants and children. Pasteurization is known but not yet universal, and consumers cannot simply examine a label for reassurance because the label may contain little beyond decorative confidence. Canned food offers convenience and allows fruit, vegetables, fish, and meat to travel farther and last longer. Yet methods vary, seals can fail, and cans are sometimes joined with lead solder. A swollen or leaking can offer a warning. A normal-looking one offers optimism. You finish eating because the whistle, clock, or supervisor has decided lunch is over. The remaining bread is wrapped for later. Crumbs are brushed from your clothing, and work resumes. Your meal has been affordable, filling, and probably safe. In the 1880s, 2 out of 3 represents excellent customer service. By afternoon, you begin to hear the scale of immigration transforming American life. Germans, Irish, Italians, Scandinavians, Jews from Eastern Europe, Chinese labourers, and many others build neighbourhoods, businesses, churches, synagogues, mutual aid societies, newspapers, restaurants, and political organisations. In New York, newcomers are processed through Castle Garden, not Ellis Island, which will not begin operating until the following decade. Families arrive carrying trunks, addresses written on scraps of paper, and expectations shaped by letters from relatives already here. Some find opportunity. Many find overcrowding, hostility, dangerous work, and employers eager to use language barriers as a wage policy. Yet immigrant communities create support where the wider society offers little. You may be far from home, but the bakery downstairs smells familiar. Someone nearby speaks your language, and an aunt's cousin knows a man who might have work. This is how a new life begins, usually without instructions. If you arrive through New York Harbor, the first view of the city is crowded with ships, masts, smoke, ferries, warehouses, and buildings rising behind the waterfront. The Statue of Liberty is not yet there at the beginning of the decade. It will be dedicated in 1886, which means your symbolic welcome to America is currently provided by dock workers shouting directions and a customs official examining your bedding. At Castle Garden, officials record your name, nationality, occupation, and destination. Translators help where they can. Labour agents, railway representatives, boarding house keepers, relatives, and occasional fraudsters wait nearby. Some newcomers know exactly where they are going. Others possess only an address copied from a letter months earlier, written in handwriting that has survived an ocean voyage with less dignity than the passenger. Your name may be misspelled, though immigration officials are not routinely replacing surnames with simpler American ones. That popular story places too much creative energy in the hands of tired clerks. Names are more often altered later by employers, teachers, officials, or families themselves, usually because pronunciation has become a daily negotiation nobody has time to continue. Once in the city, you are drawn toward people who speak your language. German communities maintain newspapers, theatres, singing societies, schools, churches, beer gardens, and businesses. Irish neighbourhoods support churches, political organisations, labour networks, and generations of relatives who have already learned which employers pay reliably and which landlords regard windows as optional. Italian immigration is increasing, especially from southern regions where poverty, taxation, and limited land push people to leave. Many men initially travel alone, intending to earn money and return home, though plans change as families follow and neighbourhoods take root. Pushcart markets, groceries, religious festivals, and mutual aid societies recreate familiar patterns within unfamiliar streets. Jewish immigrants fleeing persecution and economic hardship in the Russian Empire and Eastern Europe arrive in growing numbers during the 1880s. Many settle on New York's Lower East Side, where Yiddish fills streets lined with synagogues, workshops, bakeries, schools, and crowded tenements. Garment work offers employment, often through exhausting piecework performed in small rooms where home and factory have agreed to become equally uncomfortable. Chinese communities face particularly organized hostility. Chinese laborers have helped build Western railroads, worked in mines, farms, laundries, restaurants, and small businesses, yet violence and discriminatory laws follow them. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 sharply restricts Chinese immigration and blocks naturalization, turning racial prejudice into federal policy with the calm language of administration. Employers welcome immigrant labor when it is cheap and complain about immigrants when they organize. Workers from different backgrounds may be placed against one another, each group told that another is responsible for low wages. It is a useful arrangement for anyone hoping nobody notices who controls the payroll. Still, the neighborhood supports you. A mutual aid society may help with medical costs or funeral expenses. A church or synagogue provides worship, information, and contacts. A local newspaper explains American politics in your own language. Shopkeepers extend credit. Neighbors watch children. Letters are written home describing opportunity, hardship, and rent, though rent usually receives the most detailed paragraph. By supper, the streets smell of rye bread, garlic, cabbage, onions, coffee, fish, and stews carried from several continents. Songs drift from open windows. Conversations overlap on stairways and pavements. Children move easily between their parents' language and English, correcting both generations with the confidence of people who have discovered they are now essential translators. You may not yet feel American. America itself is not entirely sure what that means. For tonight, you have work, a room, familiar food, and someone downstairs who knows your cousin. It is not security, exactly, but it is enough to begin. Now let's board a train, because the railway is the bloodstream of the Gilded Age and occasionally behaves like one under considerable pressure. Tracks bind cities, farms, mines, ports, and western settlements into a national market. Grain, cattle, coal, steel, mail, passengers, and fortunes move at speeds that would have astonished the previous generation. Stations are crowded, locomotives breathe smoke, and travel ranges from upholstered luxury to wooden endurance. Until 1883, local time varies from town to town according to the sun, creating a scheduling problem. Railroads solve by introducing standard time zones. The country adjusts its clocks because the trains have decided reality requires organization. Accidents remain common, labor is dangerous, and rates can favor powerful customers over small farmers. Still, the network changes everything. Noon is now an agreed concept because missing the connection in Pittsburgh has become a national emergency. You enter the station beneath an iron and glass roof blackened by years of locomotive smoke. Porters weave through the crowd carrying trunks, carpet bags, hat boxes, parcels, and occasionally enough luggage to suggest that one passenger is relocating an entire drawing room. Conductors call destinations. Newsboys shout headlines. Steam hisses along the platform with the impatient sound of a machine already disappointed by humanity. Your ticket contains a departure time, which seems straightforward until you remember that every town has traditionally set its clock according to the local sun. Noon in one place may arrive several minutes before noon in the next. This is charming when you are adjusting a mantle clock in a village, and less charming when you are coordinating thousands of trains moving toward one another on the same tracks. Railroad companies, therefore, divide the continent into standard time zones in November of 1883. Many cities adopt the new railway time quickly, although Congress will not formally establish national standard time until much later. For the moment, private companies have reorganized the clock because elected government has not yet reached the station. Once aboard, your experience depends on the ticket in your hand. A wealthy traveller may occupy a Pullman sleeping car with upholstered seats, polished wood, curtains, heating, attendants, and berths prepared at night. Dining cars offer meals served while the landscape moves beyond the windows. The arrangement is impressive enough that you can briefly forget you are inside a long metal and wooden object powered by fire. In an ordinary coach, the seats are harder the air is crowded, and ventilation depends upon opening a window. This lets in fresh air, along with smoke, soot, sparks, dust, and cinders from the locomotive. By the end of the journey, your collar has changed colour, and your hair contains a small sample of every county you have crossed. Heating comes from stoves placed inside the carriage. They provide warmth in winter and a serious additional danger during collisions. Lamps can spill burning oil, wooden cars can splinter or catch fire. Braking systems are improving, but not every train uses the most modern equipment, and communication between the locomotive and the rear cars may still depend upon cords, whistles, signals, and confidence. Railroad work is equally dangerous. Brakemen climb across the roofs of moving cars to turn handbrakes, even in darkness, rain, and snow. Coupling cars requires workers to stand between heavy vehicles that have no interest in human anatomy. Engineers face exhausted schedules and poor visibility. Track crews maintain miles of rails while trains continue using them, which gives maintenance a certain urgency. Outside the cities, the railroad changes farming and trade. A farmer can ship grain, livestock, or produce to distant markets, but the railroad controls the route and often the price. Large companies may receive favourable rates, while small farmers pay more. Storage fees and freight charges eat into earnings, leading rural communities to conclude that the magnificent railway connecting them to the nation has also placed one hand firmly inside their pocket. Towns compete fiercely for stations, because a rail connection can create a thriving commercial centre. A town bypassed by the tracks may decline with remarkable speed. Hotels, warehouses, grain elevators, shops, and saloons gather beside the depot. The timetable determines when mail arrives, when goods are collected, and when everyone pauses to watch the afternoon train. As the locomotive gathers speed, farms, telegraph poles, forests, and small settlements pass your window, the rhythm of the wheels becomes steady beneath you. For the first time, ordinary travellers can cross distances that once required weeks of uncomfortable determination. You check your watch. It agrees with the station clock, the conductor's watch, and clocks in cities hundreds of miles away. America has finally agreed on the time. Naturally, a corporation had to tell it what it was. Leave the city behind and you find most Americans still living in rural areas, where life is quieter but not necessarily gentler. You wake early, feed animals, haul water, mend fences, plant, harvest, preserve food, repair tools, and monitor the weather with the concentration of someone whose income is currently floating above the horizon in cloud form. New machinery increases production, but machinery costs money. Railroads open distant markets, but freight rates can consume profits. Falling crop prices and rising debt place severe pressure on farming families, especially in the South and Great Plains. Women manage gardens, poultry, dairy work, meals, laundry, children, and seasonal labour while being described in official records simply as keeping house. The countryside looks peaceful from a railway window. This is because the railway window is moving too quickly for you to see anyone's backache. Your morning begins before the light has properly reached the fields. The rooster may help, although he contributes mainly noise and carries himself with the authority of an animal who has never repaired a fence. You pull on work clothes, step into the cold yard, and begin feeding creatures that are already waiting with the calm accusation of unpaid creditors. Cows must be milked at regular hours. Horses need grain and water before they can pull a plough or wagon. Chickens require feeding, eggs must be gathered, and pigs approach breakfast with a level of commitment rarely seen in human society. None of this waits because you are tired, ill, grieving, or experiencing what a later century will call a weekend. Breakfast follows the first round of work rather than preceding it. You return indoors with mud on your boots and cold in your hands. The meal may include eggs, biscuits, cornmeal, fried potatoes, pork, preserves, and coffee, depending on the region, season, and success of the previous harvest. Much of it has been produced within sight of the table, which sounds charming until you remember who planted, gathered, slaughtered, preserved, and cooked it. Then the main labour begins. In spring, fields must be ploughed and planted. In summer, crops require constant attention while weeds grow with the enthusiasm of something receiving free land. Autumn brings harvest, a period when the entire family works long days because grain does not care that your shoulders hurt. Winter reduces fieldwork but replaces it with repairs, woodcutting, animal care, tool maintenance, and a great deal of indoor work performed near a stove that never heats the room evenly. New equipment promises relief. Steel ploughs cut through difficult soil. Mechanical reapers and binders allow larger areas to be harvested. Threshing machines separate grain far faster than hand labour. Yet each improvement must be purchased, maintained, and sometimes financed through credit. A machine can save time while placing the farm more deeply in debt, which is the Gilded Age version of convenience. You borrow money for land, seed, tools, livestock, or machinery. The loan seems manageable when prices are high and the harvest is good. Then more farms produce more grain. National and international supplies increase, and crop prices fall. You grow more to compensate, which adds to the supply and helps push prices lower. Agriculture has introduced you to economics by placing it directly on your chest. Railroads connect you to distant markets, but you do not control the freight charges. Grain elevators and warehouses add fees. Merchants set terms. Banks expect payment regardless of drought. A bumper crop across the country can lower prices enough to make your own successful harvest financially disappointing. You have done everything correctly and are rewarded with arithmetic. The household depends heavily on women's labour. You may tend the garden, milk cows, make butter and cheese, preserve fruit, bake bread, sew clothes, clean rooms, raise children, care for the sick, and help in the fields during planting and harvest. Some farm women sell eggs, butter, poultry, or homemade goods to bring in cash. Their work can determine whether the family meets its debts, though census records may still describe them as having no occupation. By evening, the animals are fed again, tools are put away, and tomorrow's weather is discussed. You study the sky because forecasts are limited, and clouds contain more relevant financial information than most newspapers. At last, the fields darken and the house grows quiet. From a distance, the farm looks simple, wholesome, and peaceful. Up close, it is a business operated by an exhausted family while the weather serves as chairman of the board. Travel farther west and the national story becomes more complicated than the posters suggest. Railroads, land companies, and government policy encourage settlers to move on to farms, ranches, mining districts, and growing towns. Promotional material describes open land and limitless opportunity, although the land is not empty. Native nations are being forced onto reservations, deprived of hunting grounds, pressured to abandon languages and traditions, and confronted by military violence and federal policies designed to break communal landholding. The Dawes Act of 1887 will divide reservation lands into individual allotments, opening vast areas to non-native settlement and accelerating dispossession. Settlers themselves may face isolation, drought, debt, fire, and crop failure, but their hardship does not erase the people displaced to make settlement possible. The frontier is marketed as a fresh beginning. It is also someone else's continuing loss. The advertisement in your hand makes the journey sound almost restful. Rich soil waits beneath a generous sky. Rail connections promise easy access to markets. A cheerful farmhouse stands in the distance, surrounded by wheat that appears to have grown without insects, hail, debt, or human effort. The family in the picture is clean, well-dressed, and suspiciously calm. Railroad companies distribute pamphlets across the United States and Europe, encouraging farmers and immigrants to settle along their routes. Every new farm creates freight. Every new town creates passengers. The railway is not merely transporting Western settlement, it is selling it, one optimistic paragraph at a time. The Homestead Act, passed in 1862, allows eligible settlers to claim federal land if they live on it, and improve it for a required period. On paper, this offers ordinary people a path toward ownership. In practice, the land may be dry, distant from markets, difficult to cultivate, or already occupied by native communities whose presence federal law has decided to treat as an administrative inconvenience. You arrive carrying tools, bedding, seed, cooking pots, and the confidence of someone who has not yet experienced a prairie winter. Timber may be scarce, so your first home could be built from sod cut directly from the ground. The thick walls provide insulation and are surprisingly practical, although they also admit dust, insects, mice, and occasional plant growth. Your house is warm enough. It is also attempting to return gradually to the landscape. Water becomes the central question. A creek shown on a map may be seasonal. A well may need to be dug deeper than expected. Rain may arrive too heavily, too lightly, or at exactly the wrong moment. On the Great Plains, dry years can destroy crops and leave families unable to pay loans taken out for seed, livestock, fencing, or machinery. Isolation is another cost the posters mention only briefly. Your nearest neighbour may live miles away. A trip to town can consume most of a day. Illness, childbirth, accidents, and winter storms must often be managed with whatever knowledge and assistance can be found nearby. The open landscape looks beautiful because there is very little standing between you and the horizon. This is also the problem. Meanwhile, the United States government continues confining native peoples to reservations through treaties repeatedly revised, ignored, or imposed under force. The destruction of the buffalo herds removes a central source of food, clothing, shelter, trade, and cultural life for many Plains nations. Military campaigns punish resistance, while federal agents control food rations and supplies that are often delayed, inadequate, or stolen through corruption. Native children are increasingly sent to government-supported boarding schools designed to separate them from their families and cultures. Their hair may be cut, their clothing replaced, and their languages forbidden. Officials describe this as education and civilization. The children experience it as removal. The Dawes Act promises individual land ownership but attacks communal systems of land use. Reservation territory is divided into allotments assigned to individuals, while land declared surplus becomes available to non-native settlers. The policy is presented as reform. Its practical effect is the loss of millions of acres from native control over the following decades. Western towns grow quickly beside mines, cattle routes, military posts, and railway stations. A collection of tents becomes wooden storefronts, hotels, churches, saloons, newspaper offices, and banks. Fires spread easily. Businesses appear before roads. Someone is elected mayor before anyone has decided where sewage should go. You may endure hardship and still feel pride in what you build. That experience is real. So is the forced removal beneath it. The western sky stretches above everyone, wide enough to inspire dreams and large enough to hide the terms and conditions. Back in town, you are thirsty, which introduces another quiet gamble. Municipal water systems are expanding, and great engineering projects bring water into fast-growing cities. Yet pipes, wells, pumps, privies, cesspools, and sewers often coexist far too closely. The connection between contaminated water and diseases such as cholera and typhoid is becoming better understood. But infrastructure does not improve merely because a physician has finally made an excellent point. Iceboxes help preserve food, using blocks cut from frozen rivers, lakes, and ponds, stored in insulated ice houses and delivered by wagon. The iceman carries a heavy block into your kitchen while water drips across the floor. Clean ice can transform domestic life. Polluted ice can preserve yesterday's milk while adding tomorrow's illness. You place the block in the box, shut the door, and trust the river upstream has behaved responsibly. In a wealthy city household, you may already have water piped directly into the building. Turn a tap, and water appears with such modern confidence that visitors may be shown the bathroom before the paintings. The supply can fill basins, kitchen sinks, tubs, and water closets, reducing the endless labour of carrying buckets through halls and up staircases. Unfortunately, having pipes does not guarantee that the water inside them is clean. Cities draw water from rivers, reservoirs, wells, and lakes while growing faster than engineers can safely manage. Sewage may be discharged into the same river used for drinking water farther downstream. Factories add waste of their own. Rain washes street filth into gutters, drains, and waterways. The city removes dirt from one place and expresses surprise when it arrives somewhere else. Germ theory is gaining acceptance, but many people still judge water through appearance and taste. Clear water looks safe. Cold water feels safe. Water served in a polished glass by a respectable hotel appears almost incapable of wrongdoing. Typhoid bacteria remain unmoved by presentation. Boiling water can reduce danger, though it requires fuel, time, and the knowledge that boiling is necessary. Tea and coffee are therefore safer choices in many households, not because the leaves or beans possess moral virtue, but because the water has been heated thoroughly. You may believe you are beginning the day with a stimulating beverage. You are also performing accidental public health. In poorer districts, water may come from a shared tap, pump, hydrant, or yard source. Families queue with pails and pitchers. Children carry containers that grow heavier with every step home. Water is needed for drinking, cooking, washing, cleaning, and laundry, so every gallon must be moved by human effort before it can become useful. If the pump breaks, the household does not merely become inconvenienced, it loses the basis of daily life. Ice provides another modern wonder. During winter, crews cut thick blocks from frozen rivers and lakes using saws and specialized tools. Horses drag the blocks toward ice houses, where they are packed in sawdust or other insulation and stored for use through warmer months. The work is cold, heavy, and dangerous, particularly when men and animals move across uncertain ice-carrying equipment designed to cut through it. By summer, ice wagons travel through city streets. A card placed in your window shows the iceman how much you require. He lifts a block with metal tongs, carries it over one shoulder, and enters the house while leaving a trail of water behind him. Children sometimes follow the wagon, hoping for loose chips on hot days. The delivery man, having carried several 100 pounds of ice that morning, finds their enthusiasm refreshing in theory. Your icebox is not an electric refrigerator. It is an insulated cabinet with a compartment for the block and shelves for food. Cold air settles through the interior while meltwater drains into a pan or pipe. The drip pan must be emptied and cleaned. Forgetting it creates a shallow indoor pond beneath the kitchen furniture, allowing the icebox to preserve food while quietly damaging the floor. Milk, butter, meat, leftovers and other perishables last longer inside. Yet temperature control is imprecise, and the block steadily melts. You still inspect food by sight and smell. The icebox delays spoilage rather than negotiating its permanent surrender. Commercial ice may come from clean northern ponds or questionable urban waterways. Artificial ice is beginning to appear, produced mechanically, but natural ice remains common. Buyers must trust suppliers, who naturally describe every frozen block as pure, regardless of what floated beside it in January. You drink the water and close the icebox door. The kitchen feels cooler, the milk has survived another morning, and nobody appears immediately unwell. By Gilded Age standards, the system is working beautifully. If you become ill, medicine in the 1880s offers genuine progress mixed with traditions that have not received the message. Germ theory is gaining acceptance. Surgeons are increasingly influenced by antiseptic methods. Medical schools are improving, though standards vary dramatically, and many practitioners still train through apprenticeships or institutions with more confidence than laboratories. Doctors carry thermometers, stethoscopes, medicines, and personal authority into homes where families wait anxiously. They may prescribe useful care, ineffective tonics, alcohol, opiates, or compounds containing ingredients that modern pharmacies keep behind several locked doors. Patent medicines promise to cure nervousness, weakness, pain, sleeplessness, female complaints, male complaints, and the general disappointment of being alive. Some contain large quantities of alcohol or narcotics. The label shows a healthy family standing in sunlight. The bottle is mostly morphine. Marketing has entered its mature period. The doctor usually comes to you. A family member sends a child, servant, neighbour, or urgent message to his office, and sometime later he arrives carrying a black leather bag whose contents inspire both relief and concern. He removes his coat, listens to the history of your illness, and asks you to describe symptoms in a period before laboratory testing can quietly settle the argument. Diagnosis depends on observation. He examines your tongue, feels your pulse, listens to your chest, checks your temperature, and studies your face for signs of fever, weakness, or the growing suspicion that you have already taken something from a travelling medicine salesman. The clinical thermometer is becoming more practical, though measuring a temperature may still take longer than the few seconds familiar to you now. The stethoscope allows the doctor to listen to the heart and lungs with greater precision. These tools represent real scientific progress. They also rest in the hands of a profession that has not yet agreed on consistent educational standards, which gives every examination a small element of surprise. Some physicians have attended respected medical schools and trained in hospitals. Others have completed short courses with limited clinical experience. Proprietary schools can grant medical degrees after programs whose greatest achievement is ending before anyone grows discouraged. Licensing requirements vary between states and are only beginning to strengthen after earlier systems were weakened or abandoned. You therefore choose a doctor through reputation, personal recommendation, availability, and whether he appears calm when everyone else is panicking. Confidence is not proof of competence, but it is considerably easier to recognize. Surgery is changing quickly. Joseph Lister's antiseptic principles have encouraged surgeons to clean wounds, instruments, and operating spaces using carbolic acid and other methods intended to control infection. Not every surgeon accepts these ideas immediately. Some consider antiseptic routines unnecessary, inconvenient, or insulting to the dignity of an experienced man's coat. For the patient, however, fewer germs in the wound represent an excellent development. Anesthesia is firmly established, with ether and chloroform allowing operations that would have been unbearable only a few decades earlier. Yet anesthesia carries dangers of its own. Dosage is difficult to control, monitoring is limited, and the person administering it may possess enthusiasm beyond formal training. You can now sleep through surgery. Whether you wake afterward remains a detail managed with close attention. Hospitals are improving but still vary widely. Wealthy patients prefer treatment at home, where they have private rooms, family nurses, and no strangers coughing nearby. Poor patients may enter charity hospitals, crowded wards, or infirmaries connected to almshouses. Ventilation, cleanliness, staff quality, and supplies depend heavily on the institution. Prescriptions can include quinine for malaria, digitalis for certain heart conditions, opiates for pain, alcohol as a stimulant, and compounds of mercury or arsenic for selected illnesses. Some treatments are genuinely useful. Others mainly give the doctor something decisive to do while nature considers the case. Then there are patent medicines, available without meaningful regulation. Newspapers and painted signs praise syrups, bitters, tonics, pills, and electrical devices capable of restoring health, vigor, beauty, digestion, sleep, and confidence in public speaking. Testimonials describe miraculous recoveries by individuals whose names sound reassuringly specific and whose existence nobody is required to confirm. You purchase a bottle because the advertisement understands your suffering. The ingredients may include alcohol, opium, morphine, cannabis, cocaine, or a secret mixture protected by the manufacturer from dangerous public knowledge. It may ease pain or help you sleep. It may also create a new difficulty that the next bottle promises to manage. Eventually the doctor closes his bag and gives the family instructions. Keep you warm, offer broth, watch the fever, administer the medicine carefully and send for him if you worsen. Everyone nods. You are surrounded by advancing science, devoted nursing, uncertain drugs, and one very confident moustache. For now, medicine has done all it can. Your body will handle the remaining paperwork. Now let's talk about teeth, because sugar consumption is rising and dentistry is attempting to catch up without alarming anyone. Toothbrushes and powders are available, though regular dental care remains a luxury many people cannot afford. Dentists can fill cavities with gold, tin, or amalgam. Artificial teeth are improving, and vulcanized rubber allows dentures to become cheaper than earlier ivory versions. Anesthetics such as ether and nitrous oxide exist, but access and technique vary, and many procedures remain experiences you remember with unusual clarity. A painful tooth may be ignored until extraction becomes unavoidable. You sit in a rigid chair while instruments glint nearby and the dentist reassures you in the calm tone used by men who are not about to feel anything. Your options are better than they were 50 years earlier. This is technically comforting. Your trouble probably begins quietly. A tooth reacts to cold water, then to hot coffee, then to anything containing sugar, which is unfortunate because sugar is appearing in more American diets than ever before. Refined sugar has become cheaper and more widely available. Candy shops flourish. Sweetened tea, pies, cakes, preserves, and biscuits offer small pleasures to people whose working days contain very few of them. The bacteria in your mouth are delighted by this national prosperity. You may own a toothbrush with a bone or wooden handle and animal hair bristles. Tooth powders and pastes contain ingredients such as chalk, charcoal, soap, salt, or powdered herbs. Some clean reasonably well, others are abrasive enough to polish a cooking pot. You scrub with determination, believing that more force must produce more health, while your enamel quietly requests legal representation. Many people clean their teeth irregularly or not at all. Dental advice is available, but habits vary, clean water is not always convenient, and a dentist's visit costs money that might otherwise purchase food, fuel, or rent. As a result, you wait. The ache becomes stronger. At first, you chew on the opposite side. Then you apply clove oil, spirits, laudanum, or a household remedy supplied by someone who claims it worked perfectly for an uncle who is no longer available for questioning. You pack the cavity, hold your jaw, and attempt to sleep. Eventually, the pain begins keeping its own schedule. A trained dentist may examine the tooth with a mirror and metal probe. Dentistry is becoming more professional during the 19th century, with dental schools, journals, associations, and specialized instruments. Standards are still uneven, however. Some practitioners possess excellent training. Others have acquired a chair, a sign, and enough confidence to proceed. If the tooth can be saved, the decayed material may be removed with hand instruments or a mechanical drill. Foot-powered dental drills allow the dentist to work faster, though the sound and vibration do little to improve your emotional state. The cavity can be packed with gold foil, tin, or dental amalgam. Gold is durable and expensive. Amalgam is cheaper but controversial among dentists, some of whom distrust its mercury content or dislike the methods used by competitors who favor it. You sit with your mouth open while two professional schools argue inside it. Anesthesia may help. Nitrous oxide has been used in dentistry since the middle of the century, and ether can also reduce pain. Yet neither is guaranteed to be offered. Equipment, cost, experience, and the dentist's personal opinions all matter. Some patients receive meaningful relief. Others receive a firm grip on the chair and the suggestion that the procedure will be brief. If the tooth cannot be repaired, the pliers appear. Extraction is quick when it goes well. The dentist grips the tooth, loosens it, and pulls while you experience several seconds of extremely concentrated history. If the crown breaks or the roots resist, the procedure becomes longer and introduces additional instruments. Your dentist remains calm. He has another appointment after lunch. Losing several teeth creates new problems with eating, speech, and appearance. Dentures made with vulcanized rubber bases are cheaper and lighter than many older versions. Porcelain teeth can be attached to the rubber, producing a respectable smile for the growing middle class. They may not fit perfectly, and the rubber can carry an unpleasant smell if poorly cleaned, but you can once again choose something more ambitious than porridge. At last, you leave the office with a numb or aching jaw, instructions to rest, and perhaps a small tooth wrapped as a souvenir you did not request. Dentistry has saved you from months of pain. It has merely required an unforgettable afternoon to do it. Disease remains a constant presence, even in prosperous homes. Tuberculosis moves slowly through families, often romanticized in literature and considerably less graceful in practice. Diphtheria threatens children. Pneumonia follows winter cold. Typhoid travels through contaminated water. Childbirth carries serious danger from hemorrhage and infection. Infants die at rates that make family photographs and small graves painfully common. Vaccination against smallpox is established, but unevenly accepted and administered. Hospitals are growing, although many people still prefer treatment at home, partly from custom and partly because hospitals have not completely stopped being places one enters with one disease and acquires another. When sickness comes, women usually perform the nursing, sitting through the night, changing linens, preparing food, measuring medicine, and listening to every change in breathing. There is no monitor beside the bed. The monitor is you. At first, the illness may seem ordinary. A child complains of a sore throat. Your husband returns from work shivering beneath his coat. Your mother begins coughing at supper and insists it is nothing, which is the traditional opening statement of nearly every serious family illness. By morning, the household has changed. Curtains are drawn to soften the light. A fire is kept burning. Basins, spoons, folded cloths, medicine bottles, and half-finished cups of broth gather beside the bed. Normal routines continue in whispers. Children are told not to enter the room, which makes the room immediately fascinating to them. You become nurse, cleaner, cook, messenger, and medical observer. You wash the patient's face, change damp bedding, count spoonfuls of medicine, and try to remember exactly when the fever began. The doctor may visit once or twice a day, but you remain for every hour between. His instructions are brief. Your responsibility is continuous. Tuberculosis, often called consumption, can linger for months or years. The patient loses weight, grows pale, tires easily, and coughs persistently. Literature may describe a delicate sufferer resting beautifully near a window, but the real disease brings fever, night sweats, blood, weakness, and slow fear. Families share rooms, dishes, and air without fully understanding how infection spreads. One person becomes ill, then another begins coughing, and coincidence receives more credit than it deserves. Diphtheria can move much faster. A child develops fever and throat pain, followed by a thick membrane that can obstruct breathing. Before antitoxin becomes widely available in the following decade, treatment is limited and outcomes can be devastating. You sit beside the bed listening to each breath, measuring hope in seconds. Typhoid arrives through contaminated food or water. Fever rises, weakness deepens, and the illness may last for weeks. The same water pump that supplied breakfast can quietly supply an entire neighborhood with disease. Closing the pump would help, although first the city must admit that invisible organisms possess more influence than respectable appearances. Childbirth presents another danger. Most women deliver at home with the help of a midwife, physician, female relatives, or some combination of whoever can arrive in time. Many births end safely, but hemorrhage, obstructed labor, and infection can transform an expected celebration into a household crisis within hours. Antiseptic practices are spreading, though not every attendant washes thoroughly or accepts the new ideas with enthusiasm. Medical pride remains one of the few substances completely resistant to disinfectant. If the patient worsens, the family must decide whether to seek hospital care. Hospitals are becoming cleaner and more scientific, particularly in large cities, but their reputation remains mixed. Charity wards can be crowded. Private rooms cost money. For many families, home feels safer, more familiar, and less frightening, even when home contains no trained nurse and very little equipment. Neighbors often help. Someone brings soup, someone watches the younger children, a relative takes over laundry. Religious congregations and mutual aid societies may provide food, money, or assistance with medical expenses. Sickness reveals the strength of a community, because illness rarely respects the household budget. Eventually, the fever breaks, or it does not. The patient sits up and asks for food, or the doctor lowers his voice in the hallway. Both possibilities are common enough that families learn not to celebrate too early. You straighten the room, replace the water, and return to the bedside. The house remains still around you. Everyone is waiting for the next breath, and you are the only machine assigned to hear it. When death arrives, it does not disappear behind institutional doors. The body is often prepared at home. Family members, neighbours, undertakers, clergy and friends move through rooms altered by mourning cloth, flowers, lowered voices, and practical decisions. Funeral customs are elaborate, especially among families able to afford them. Black clothing follows detailed rules. Widows may remain in deep mourning for extended periods, wearing fabrics and accessories that publicly announce grief long after private exhaustion has become harder to describe. Photographs of the dead, particularly children, may be taken as treasured memorials when no other portrait exists. Funeral processions move through streets in horse-drawn hearses, while cemeteries designed like landscape parks offer monuments, trees, and Sunday visitors. Death is sorrow, ritual, commerce, and social expectation all at once. Even grief has a dress code. The bedroom where the person died may become the centre of the household. Windows are opened briefly. Mirrors may be covered. Clocks are sometimes stopped at the hour of death, preserving one moment while the rest of the house continues moving around it. Curtains are closed, voices soften, and ordinary objects suddenly seem too cheerful for the room. Someone must notify relatives. Someone must contact the minister. Someone must speak to the undertaker, choose a coffin, arrange the funeral, order mourning clothes, prepare food for visitors, and decide which newspaper should receive the death notice. Grief has arrived, but it has brought paperwork. The undertaker takes on an increasingly professional role during the 19th century. Earlier generations often relied more heavily on family members, neighbours, cabinet makers, and church communities. Now funeral businesses offer coffins, embalming, transport, flowers, mourning goods, and carefully managed ceremonies. Death is becoming an organised service, which is useful because the family is in no condition to negotiate with a carpenter. Embalming has grown more familiar since the Civil War, when bodies of soldiers and prominent men were transported long distances for burial. It is not used in every case, but it allows the dead to remain presentable for viewing, especially when relatives need time to travel. Chemicals are introduced into the body while the undertaker maintains the calm expression of someone performing work nobody else wishes to discuss over supper. The body may lie in the parlour, giving the room its later association with funerals. Friends and relatives arrive to pay respects. They sit in stiff clothing, drink coffee, exchange memories, and attempt to say something comforting without suggesting that death has behaved unreasonably by following its established pattern. Children may be brought forward to look at the deceased. This is not considered necessarily harmful. Death is part of family life, visible and familiar. Adults explain that the person appears peaceful. The child looks carefully and decides peaceful people should probably breathe more often. Mourning clothes communicate your relationship to the dead. A widow of means may enter deep mourning in dull black fabrics, crepe veils, gloves, and jewellery made from jet or dark materials. Over time, she can move into lighter stages of mourning, introducing grey, lavender, or white, according to custom. The transition is gradual and visible. Society may not know how you feel, but it expects an accurate textile report. Men face fewer requirements. A black armband, dark suit, hatband, or subdued clothing may be enough. This allows a grieving husband to return to ordinary dress while his widow remains wrapped in crepe like a walking thundercloud for months or years. Equality has once again been carefully considered and placed elsewhere. The funeral procession moves slowly toward the cemetery. Horses wear dark coverings. The hearse may have glass sides, polished wood, and elaborate decoration. Carriages follow in order determined by family connection and social standing. Even now, when everyone is supposedly contemplating eternity, someone notices who received the better carriage. Rural cemeteries outside crowded city centres offer winding paths, trees, ponds, sculptures, and family monuments. They serve as burial grounds and public parks, places where families walk on Sundays, visit graves, and escape noisy streets. The dead receive some of the finest landscaping available in the city. They are finally living somewhere quiet. After the burial, the family returns to a house that feels altered. Flowers fade, visitors leave, food remains untouched on plates. Practical duties begin to thin, and private grief becomes more visible once there is nobody left to organise. The Gilded Age knows how to stage death beautifully. Living with the empty chair afterward is left entirely to you. After so much work and illness, you deserve leisure, or at least the approved version of it. Urban parks provide space to walk, ride, row, picnic, listen to music, and briefly escape the streets. Central Park, still developing into a mature landscape, serves both recreation and social display. Wealthy families pass in carriages. Working families arrive on days off with food wrapped in paper. Children run where adults can still see them. Baseball is becoming a major professional entertainment, drawing loud crowds and building fierce loyalty around teams and players. Circuses, theatres, vaudeville halls, beaches, and amusement grounds offer escape at different prices and levels of respectability. You may spend the afternoon watching a game, strolling under trees, or pretending not to notice who is watching you stroll. Fresh air is free. Everything surrounding it has found a way to charge admission. You enter Central Park through one of its broad gateways and immediately feel the city loosen its grip. The clatter of carts fades beneath trees. Grass replaces cobblestones. Water reflects the sky without carrying industrial waste past your boots, which gives it an almost suspicious appearance. The park is not truly wild. It has been carefully designed to look natural through enormous amounts of planning, excavation, planting, stonework, drainage, and labour. Paths curve gently because straight lines would remind you of streets. Bridges separate walkers, riders, and carriages so that each class can enjoy nature without colliding too often with another. If you are wealthy, you may arrive in a polished carriage during the fashionable afternoon hours. The point is not merely to enjoy the scenery. It is to be seen enjoying it correctly. Your horses are groomed, your clothing is immaculate, and your route passes other carriages moving slowly enough for everyone to identify one another while pretending to study the trees. You acknowledge acquaintances with a nod. You overlook rivals with greater precision. A public drive through the park allows society to conduct several hundred silent evaluations before dinner. Working families come on Sundays or holidays, carrying baskets, children, blankets, and food prepared at home. The park offers room unavailable in crowded tenements. Children can run without immediately meeting a wagon wheel. Adults sit beneath trees, share bread and fruit, speak in familiar languages, and enjoy several hours in which nobody is charging rent for the space around them. Rules still apply. Park authorities regulate where you may walk, ride, play games, sell goods, or gather in groups. Lawns intended mainly for viewing may not welcome feet. Recreation is encouraged, provided it remains tidy, restrained, and compatible with the landscape designer's feelings. Boating offers another gentle amusement. You rent a small boat and row across the lake while attempting to appear relaxed. Couples sit opposite one another beneath parasols. Families drift near the shore. One gentleman has clearly overstated his skill and is now conducting a private argument with an oar. Music fills the park during public concerts. Brass bands perform popular tunes, patriotic pieces, marches, and arrangements from opera. Crowds gather around the musicians while vendors sell refreshments nearby. For a few hours, culture becomes available without velvet seats or an evening coat, though someone will still complain that the program was better last week. Baseball provides a louder form of escape. Professional clubs have been established for years, and the sport is developing rules, leagues, statistics, stars, and arguments that can occupy an entire railway journey. You join a crowd at a ball ground where men shout advice to players who cannot hear them and would not benefit if they could. The field may be rough, the seating uncomfortable, and the language more energetic than anything permitted in a drawing room. Vendors move through the crowd. Players slide into bases. Umpires make decisions and immediately discover that several thousand people possess stronger qualifications. Elsewhere, theatres and variety halls offer comedy, songs, dancing, acrobatics, melodrama, and novelty acts. Vaudeville is taking shape as organised variety entertainment suitable for broad audiences, though standards of suitability depend heavily on the theatre and whether your aunt has attended. Circuses arrive with animals, performers, wagons, posters, and promises that nearly everything inside is the greatest ever seen. Seaside resorts and amusement grounds offer bathing, music, food, mechanical rides, and crowds escaping the heat together. Even leisure has become an industry, with tickets, refreshments, transport, and souvenirs available at every stage. As evening approaches, you leave the park beneath lengthening shadows. Carriages roll toward the avenue. Families gather blankets and sleeping children. Musicians pack away their instruments. You've enjoyed trees, air, music, sport, and several hours of carefully supervised freedom. The city has allowed you to relax. It has also taken attendance. As evening approaches, the wealth of the age becomes impossible to ignore. Along Fifth Avenue, in Newport, and in other fashionable enclaves, industrial fortunes turn into stone facades, carved staircases, imported panelling, stained glass, sculpture, tapestries, libraries, ballrooms, conservatories, and dining rooms capable of seating people the owner does not particularly like. A mansion is not merely a home, it is evidence. It announces that railroads, steel, banking, mining, oil, or manufacturing have produced a family important enough to require a reception room for receiving people they already know. Architects blend European styles with magnificent confidence. Interiors contain objects gathered from several centuries and arranged as if the Renaissance had recently opened a warehouse. You walk through room after room, each one more elaborate than the last. Eventually you realize the family occupies only a small portion of the house. The rest is wealth standing indoors. You approach beneath a carved stone entrance large enough to make an ordinary front door feel apologetic. A liveried servant admits you into a hall of marble, dark wood, bronze, and painted ceilings. The staircase rises dramatically ahead, because wealthy people must never climb to the second floor without first appearing in a theatrical production. Nothing has been selected merely because it is useful. A chair must also be French. A cabinet must possess a respectable European ancestry. A fireplace must be carved from stone transported across an ocean, preferably from a building that was already old when America was still an administrative inconvenience. Industrial families collect European art and antiques with tremendous energy. Some acquire genuine masterpieces. Others purchase objects whose histories improve noticeably during the journey through customs. Dealers understand that new money enjoys old provenance, especially when the provenance is written in elegant handwriting. The library contains thousands of books bound in leather and arranged beneath carved shelves. Whether anyone reads them is less important than the fact that the household could, should a severe emergency require several volumes of Roman history. A globe stands nearby, allowing the owner to indicate where his raw materials come from without discussing how the workers there are paid. In the conservatory, tropical plants grow beneath glass while winter presses against the walls. Orchids, palms, ferns, and flowering vines create a private climate maintained by gardeners, boilers, and considerable expense. You can stroll through warm greenery in January while somewhere outside a delivery man loses feeling in his hands. The ballroom may occupy an entire wing. Its floor is polished for dancing, its walls hung with mirrors, and its ceiling bright with chandeliers. Hundreds of candles or gas jets once supplied the light, though electricity is beginning to appear in the grandest houses. Early electric bulbs are shown to guests with open pride. The light arrives at the touch of a switch, requiring only generators, wiring, engineers, and a household willing to accept that the walls now contain an invisible force nobody fully trusts. Bedrooms are numerous, though many remain unused except when guests arrive. There are rooms for family members, rooms for visitors, rooms for servants, rooms for dressing, rooms for sitting before dinner, and rooms for recovering afterward. Every activity has been granted its own architecture. Bathrooms are becoming especially impressive. Wealthy homes may contain hot and cold running water, porcelain tubs, tiled floors, and modern water closets. Owners discuss these fixtures enthusiastically because indoor plumbing is still new enough to serve as conversation. A guest may be shown the bathroom with the same pride normally reserved for a portrait of an ancestor. Yet the mansion is never private in the modern sense. Servants move through hidden corridors and back staircases. Bells connect bedrooms to pantries. Speaking tubes carry instructions through walls. Deliveries arrive below stairs. Fires attended, clothes prepared, meals organised, floors polished, and waste removed by an invisible population whose work makes the family's comfort appear effortless. The house is also expensive to maintain. Coal, repairs, wages, food, horses, gardeners, furnishings, and constant entertaining consume enormous sums. Some families possess fortunes large enough to absorb this. Others live grandly while debts gather quietly beneath the upholstery. You pass through the drawing room, music room, picture gallery, and dining room until the scale begins to feel less comfortable than competitive. Each doorway reveals another proof of success. Every surface seems to announce that someone has recently defeated a rival in steel. At last, you reach a smaller sitting room where the family actually spends its evenings. It is warmer, quieter, and surprisingly ordinary. A book rests beside a chair. Someone has left sewing on a table. The enormous house has finally reached human proportions. The mansion contains 60 rooms, 20 servants, 7 fireplaces, and a staircase imported from France. Naturally, everyone prefers this corner. The mansion works because servants keep it working. A large household may employ cooks, housemaids, laundresses, footmen, coachmen, grooms, valets, ladies' maids, nurses, governesses, gardeners, and a butler responsible for making the entire arrangement appear calm. Their day begins before the family wakes and ends after the family has gone to bed. Coal must be carried, fires must be lit, hot water must appear, clothing must be brushed, mended, pressed, and laid out. Meals must arrive warm despite kitchens located at a tasteful distance from anyone expected to eat them. Servants use backstairs, basement corridors, bells, speaking tubes, and an internal geography designed to keep labour invisible. They know the household secrets because they empty the bins, read expressions, hear arguments, and carry trays through silence. The family calls this privacy. The servants call it Tuesday. You begin below stairs, where the rooms are plainer, the ceilings lower, and nobody has imported a fireplace from France. The servants' hall contains a long table, straight-backed chairs, a clock, and perhaps a few prints on the wall. Meals are taken quickly, according to rank and whatever time remains after serving everyone else. The household has its own hierarchy. The butler and housekeeper stand at the top, each controlling separate territories with the careful diplomacy of neighbouring governments. The butler supervises the male indoor staff, the wine cellar, the silver and formal service. The housekeeper manages the female staff, household linen, stores, cleaning schedules, and a collection of keys substantial enough to suggest she is guarding a prison. Below them come valets, ladies' maids, footmen, cooks, nurses, housemaids, kitchen maids, scullery maids, and other servants whose status can be measured by how close they work to the family and how rarely they are required to touch dirty water. A scullery maid occupies the lower end of this arrangement. She scrubs pots, washes dishes, cleans floors, carries fuel, and performs the tasks left over after everyone else has completed work considered more respectable. The kitchen may be hot, wet, smoky, and loud. Her hands remain in harsh water until the skin cracks. She is often young, poorly paid, and expected to improve her position through years of performing jobs nobody else wants. Upstairs, the lady's maid works with silks, jewellery, cosmetics, and confidential information. She dresses her employer, arranges hair, repairs delicate garments, packs trunks, and knows which invitations caused excitement and which letters caused tears. A valet provides similar service to a gentleman, caring for suits, boots, shaving equipment, and the outward appearance of effortless authority. These servants may travel with the family and receive cast-off clothing or gifts. They also remain personally available for much of the day. Your employer's decision to change clothes becomes your emergency. Footmen perform the most visible male service. They open doors, announce guests, carry dishes, deliver messages, and stand behind chairs during dinner. Employers sometimes select them partly for height and appearance, especially when hiring several who are expected to match. You are paid to carry trays, but your calves are apparently part of the household decoration. Most servants work extremely long hours. A housemaid may rise before 6 and continue until late evening, with short pauses between duties. Time off varies by household. Some receive an evening out each week or part of Sunday. Others depend upon the generosity of employers who describe themselves as treating servants like family, usually just before asking them to cancel their afternoon off. Living in the house saves rent and meals, but it also gives the employer control over your home. Rules may govern visitors, dress, conduct, curfews, and romantic relationships. Marriage often means leaving service, especially for women, since few households are interested in employing a maid whose attention may occasionally drift toward her own family. Still, service can offer stability. A competent servant may move between households, seek better wages, and rise through the ranks. Experienced cooks, butlers, and housekeepers are valuable enough to negotiate terms and receive excellent references. The difficulty is surviving long enough to become indispensable. As evening approaches, the mansion glows. Fires burn, lamps shine, flowers stand in polished vases, and dinner appears at precisely the right moment. Guests admire the gracious household and its apparently natural elegance. Behind the dining room door, someone is running downstairs because the sauce has separated. Perfection has been achieved once again. It is breathing heavily in the corridor. Dinner is the great performance of the wealthy household, beginning with dressing and ending several hours later in a haze of food, wine, candles, and concealed fatigue. Courses may include soup, fish, meat, game, vegetables, savouries, puddings, fruit, and sweets, served according to increasingly fashionable systems that replace the crowded table arrangements of earlier generations with dishes brought sequentially. Each guest confronts an array of cutlery, glassware, plates, and unspoken rules. You use utensils from the outside inward and hope nobody serves something requiring specialized equipment. Conversation must remain lively but not vulgar, intelligent but not challenging, personal but never honest enough to slow digestion. Behind the doors, servants coordinate timing with military precision. At the table, the host behaves as though dinner has occurred naturally. Wealth is most convincing when nobody mentions the kitchen. You enter the dining room according to rank, family connection, and whatever private calculations the hostess completed earlier that afternoon. A gentleman offers his arm to the woman assigned to him, even if they have met only once and already disagree about railway regulation. The procession moves toward the table beneath chandeliers bright enough to expose both jewellery and uncertainty. Place cards tell you where to sit. The arrangement has been designed carefully. Married couples are separated because they can speak to one another at home, assuming they still do. Interesting guests are distributed among quieter ones. Rivals are placed far enough apart to prevent open conflict but close enough to improve the evening for everyone else. The table is covered in white linen and decorated with flowers, silver, candles, porcelain, and enough glassware to suggest that each drink requires its own architectural district. Your place may include separate forks for fish, meat, salad, and dessert, along with knives, spoons, and a small piece of equipment whose purpose will become clear only after you have used it incorrectly. The first course arrives quietly. Soup is served from the left or right according to household practice, while footmen move behind chairs with controlled precision. You lift the correct spoon and guide it away from yourself, because dining etiquette has found a way to regulate even the direction in which soup travels. Next comes fish, possibly accompanied by a specialized silver fork and knife. Then meat, poultry, or game. Roast beef, mutton, venison, duck, quail, or terrapin may appear, depending on region, season, and how urgently the host wishes to demonstrate access to expensive ingredients. Vegetables arrive as accompaniments rather than the central reason anyone has gathered. Under service à la Russe, which becomes increasingly fashionable among wealthy Americans, dishes are brought in sequence and portioned or served by attendants. This differs from the older service à la Française, where many dishes crowded the table at once. The newer system keeps food warmer, allows greater control, and ensures that servants remain in constant motion for several uninterrupted hours. Wine changes with the course. You may receive sherry with soup, white wine with fish, claret or burgundy with meat, champagne for celebration, and port or Madeira later. A servant watches each glass and refills it before you have fully decided whether you wanted more. Refusal is possible, though it must be performed delicately enough not to imply that anyone else has been drinking with excessive dedication. Conversation moves around the table in polished fragments. You discuss travel, theatre, books, society, weather, and public affairs. Provided public affairs do not become unpleasantly public. Money is everywhere but rarely mentioned directly. Business fortunes have paid for the room, the food, the servants, and several guests' jewellery, yet asking how much anything costs would be considered crude. You must not speak too loudly, laugh too freely, monopolise attention, or allow silence to form near your chair. You are expected to contribute sparkle without producing heat. A truly successful dinner conversation resembles champagne. It rises lightly, makes everyone feel more interesting, and reveals nothing useful. After the heavier courses come savouries, small, strongly flavoured dishes intended to revive an appetite that has already survived several meats. Then arrive puddings, creams, jellies, pastries, fruit, nuts, and sweets. The meal continues because abundance is the message, and messages are more convincing when repeated in sugar. At last, the ladies withdraw to the drawing room while the gentlemen remain with port and cigars, though customs are beginning to loosen in some households. Political opinions become stronger once the women leave, as if female presence had been the only structure holding the federal government together. You rise from the table several hours older and noticeably fuller. The hostess smiles. The guests praise the dinner. Behind the closed doors, servants begin clearing a battlefield of plates, glasses, crumbs, wax, and collapsed arrangements. Dinner has been effortless, elegant, and perfect. It required only an entire household to pretend nobody was working. After dinner comes the ball, where chandeliers glow, musicians play, silk moves across polished floors, and every pleasant conversation contains a quiet background calculation. Young women enter society through carefully managed introductions, visits, dinners, and dances. Young men are evaluated for family, fortune, prospects, habits, and whether their moustache appears responsible. Chaperones observe from chairs placed along the walls, pretending to discuss music while tracking every dance with the concentration of customs officials. A woman must appear interested without appearing eager. A man must show intention without creating scandal. Too much attention becomes gossip. Too little becomes humiliation. Marriage remains an economic and legal decision, as well as a romantic one, particularly for women whose independent options are limited. You circle the ballroom beside someone you barely know and assess whether you could tolerate breakfast with them for 40 years. The orchestra plays beautifully. You enter through a receiving line where the host and hostess greet several hundred people while maintaining expressions of personal delight. Your name is announced, your clothing is examined in a single efficient glance, and you move onward before anyone can ask a question requiring an honest answer. The room is hot almost immediately. Gas jets, candles, electric lights in the newest houses, musicians, servants, and a crowd dressed in layers combine to produce a private summer, regardless of the season outside. Windows may be opened, though this risks admitting soot, street noise, and the deeply democratic air of the city. A dance card hangs from a ribbon at a young woman's wrist. It lists the evening's dances with spaces for gentlemen to write their names. A full card suggests popularity. An empty one becomes a small public document describing social failure in excellent penmanship. A gentleman requests a dance through the correct introduction. He cannot simply appear and begin speaking as though the ballroom were a railway platform. Someone must establish that he belongs, has a name, and is not known to have recently fled creditors in 3 states. Once introduced, you exchange the kind of conversation designed to reveal character without revealing anything interesting. You discuss the music, the size of the crowd, mutual acquaintances, travel, weather, and whether the floor is unusually polished. The floor is always unusually polished because nobody wishes to begin courtship by discussing money, religion, politics, health, inheritance, or the actual terms upon which marriage depends. The dances themselves may include waltzes, polkas, quadrilles, and other fashionable forms. The waltz places partners close enough to alarm older relatives who remember when respectable dancing involved several feet of protective geometry. By the 1880s, it is widely accepted, though chaperones continue watching with the expression of people prepared to revive civilization if a hand moves half an inch. Your partner must guide confidently without gripping too tightly, converse without losing the rhythm, and avoid steering you into another couple. This is useful information. A man who cannot navigate a ballroom may not be prepared to manage a railway fortune, a household budget, or a breakfast table containing several newspapers. Money remains present behind every introduction. A young man with an old family name, but declining income, may interest the daughter of a newly wealthy industrialist. He offers social standing. She offers cash. Both families may describe the arrangement as a union of exceptional affection because nobody prints wedding invitations announcing a merger. American heiresses are increasingly attractive to European aristocrats, whose titles remain splendid while their estates require urgent repair. A wealthy American family may gain a duke, count, or prince. The nobleman gains enough money to prevent the ancestral roof from entering the ancestral dining room. Romance has once again benefited from structural maintenance. For women, the stakes are serious. Marriage shapes residence, income, social position, and legal independence. Married women's property laws have improved their rights in many states, but husbands still hold substantial authority within family life. Divorce is possible but socially difficult, and respectable professional careers remain limited. Choosing a dance partner may therefore feel light. Choosing what follows does not. The chaperones understand this completely. They observe who asks whom, how often, and with what visible enthusiasm. They notice the young man who has spent too long near the punch, and the woman who has danced 3 times with the same partner. Before midnight, the room has produced enough evidence to support several weeks of private discussion. At last, the orchestra finishes a final piece. Cloaks arrive, carriages are called, goodbyes are exchanged beneath lowered lights, while servants begin confronting flowers, spilled drinks, and a floor bearing the physical remains of courtship. You leave with tired feet, several new suspicions, and one name written twice on your card. The evening was devoted entirely to music. Everyone will discuss the marriages tomorrow. While the ball continues, men in hotels, clubs, saloons, offices, and party headquarters are arranging the republic. Politics in the Gilded Age is energetic, fiercely partisan, and often inseparable from patronage. Political machines help immigrants find jobs, housing, food, legal assistance, and citizenship guidance, then expect loyalty at election time. Public offices are distributed as rewards. Contracts travel toward friends. Reformers demand a professional civil service after the assassination of President James Garfield by a disappointed office seeker helps demonstrate that the existing system may contain flaws. The Pendleton Act of 1883 begins federal civil service reform, although corruption does not immediately pack its bags. Campaigns involve parades, banners, songs, newspapers, speeches, and quantities of cigar smoke capable of influencing weather. Democracy is thriving. It simply knows several men by their first names. You enter a ward headquarters tucked behind a saloon, where the room is warm, crowded, and fragrant with tobacco. Men sit around scarred tables discussing jobs, elections, street repairs, police matters, and which cousin requires a position in the customs house. A portrait of the party candidate hangs on the wall with the solemn expression of someone who has never personally requested a favour. The local ward boss knows nearly everyone. He knows which family has fallen behind on rent, which labourer was injured, which shopkeeper needs a license, and which newly arrived immigrant requires help understanding citizenship papers. When winter comes, the machine may distribute coal or food. When someone dies, it may help arrange the funeral. When a young man needs employment, a letter from the right person can place him on a city payroll. This assistance is real, so is the bill. On election day, the family is expected to remember who delivered the coal. Loyalty becomes a practical exchange rather than a philosophical commitment. The machine does not ask whether you have studied the party platform. It asks whether your brother, neighbours, and adult sons will be voting correctly. Patronage stretches far beyond city wards. When a new president takes office, thousands of federal positions may be distributed to loyal supporters under the spoils system. Customs offices, postal appointments, clerkships, and other government jobs become rewards for campaign work. Qualifications are helpful, though enthusiasm at the correct convention can prove equally persuasive. Office seekers gather in Washington with letters of recommendation and expressions of patient determination. They wait in corridors, visit politicians, and explain that their years of party service have prepared them perfectly for a salaried position requiring skills they have never demonstrated. President James Garfield encounters this pressure immediately after taking office in 1881. One persistent applicant, Charles Guiteau, convinces himself that he deserves a diplomatic appointment because he delivered a speech supporting Garfield's election. The speech had little influence, but Guiteau's estimate of its importance remained extremely healthy. After being refused an appointment, Guiteau shoots Garfield at a railway station in Washington. The president survives the initial attack but dies weeks later after infection and medical treatment that involves repeated probing of the wound by doctors who have not fully accepted antiseptic practice. The assassination horrifies the country and gives civil service reformers a grimly effective argument. The Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act of 1883 establishes a merit-based system for selected federal jobs. Applicants for certain positions must pass examinations, and government employees receive greater protection from removal for political reasons. At first, the law covers only a modest portion of the federal workforce, but it begins shifting public employment away from pure patronage. The change creates an unexpected problem for political parties. If office holders can no longer be required to donate part of their salaries to party organizations, campaign money must come from somewhere else. Business interests prove available. Railroad companies, banks, manufacturers, and wealthy individuals contribute funds while insisting that their generosity is motivated entirely by civic feeling. Politicians listen carefully to donors who have no official control over them and only several $1 million of personal concern. Campaigns are enormous public spectacles. Torchlight processions fill the streets. Marching clubs wear uniforms. Brass bands play campaign songs. Banners stretch across avenues. Newspapers openly support parties and describe opponents with language that would make a modern legal department request several meetings. You attend a rally where speakers stand for hours explaining tariffs, currency, pensions, reform, and the moral collapse certain to follow if the other party wins. The crowd cheers, cigars glow, and someone begins a song containing the candidate's name forced into an unsuitable rhyme. By midnight, the speeches end, and the ward leaders return to their tables. Favours are noted, promises are remembered, jobs, contracts, and loyalties continue moving quietly beneath the patriotic noise. You have participated in American democracy. Someone has also written down your address. The working day eventually produces resistance. Labour unions grow as workers demand shorter hours, safer conditions, and better pay. The Knights of Labour attract skilled and unskilled workers across trades, while local organisations support strikes and boycotts. Employers hire guards, secure court orders, dismiss organisers, and describe collective action as dangerous interference with the natural right of management to decide everything. The campaign for an 8-hour day gains momentum, leading to mass demonstrations in 1886. In Chicago, a Labour rally at Haymarket Square ends in violence after a bomb is thrown and police open fire, creating deaths, panic, controversial trials, and a lasting symbol of labour conflict. You ask for 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours for yourself. Industry hears the first 8 and becomes confused about the remainder. You begin by speaking quietly with the workers beside you. The machines are too loud for long conversations, so plans form during lunch, outside the factory gate, in boarding houses, meeting halls, saloons, churches, and kitchens after the children have gone to sleep. One person knows a printer, another knows a union organizer. Someone produces a leaflet explaining that 12 hours beside exposed machinery may not be the natural condition of mankind. This is considered a radical discovery. The Knights of Labour grow rapidly during the middle of the decade. Unlike many earlier trade organisations, the order attempts to unite a broad range of workers, including skilled craftsmen, factory labourers, miners, women, and black workers. Though prejudice and local exclusion still limit its reach, its members discuss cooperation, education, equal pay for equal work, and the replacement of wage dependence with a more just economic system. Meetings may begin with ritual and secrecy, partly to build solidarity and partly because employers react badly when workers discover they have interests in common. Union members risk dismissal, eviction from company housing, or placement on blacklists shared among businesses. Joining an organisation can cost you the job you are trying to improve. Employers argue that wages and hours are private matters between the company and each worker. This sounds balanced until you notice that one side owns the factory, controls the payroll, hires the guards, and can replace the other side before breakfast. A strike begins when workers refuse to enter the gates. Production stops, pickets gather outside, carrying signs and speaking to those brought in as replacements. The company may hire private detectives or armed guards. Police are called to protect property. Newspapers describe the dispute according to the loyalties of their owners, which is fortunate because facts have always benefited from a financial sponsor. The demand for an 8-hour working day becomes a powerful national cause. The slogan divides the day into 8 hours for work, 8 for rest, and 8 for personal life. To a labourer accustomed to 10, 12, or 14 hours, this sounds less like luxury than the radical proposal that a human body should occasionally sit down. On the 1st of May in 1886, hundreds of thousands of workers across the country joined strikes and demonstrations supporting the 8-hour day. Chicago becomes one of the movement's centres. Tension is already high between labour organisers, employers, and police. At the McCormick Reaper Works, police fire on striking workers during a confrontation, killing several people. A protest meeting is called for the 4th of May at Haymarket Square. You stand among workers, families, organisers, and curious observers, while speakers address the crowd from a wagon. The evening is damp, and attendance is smaller than expected. The gathering remains peaceful for most of the night. Then police advance and order the meeting to disperse. Someone throws a bomb into their ranks. The explosion tears through the square. Police begin firing, much of it in confusion and darkness. Officers and civilians are killed or wounded. Nobody can establish with certainty who threw the bomb, but uncertainty does not slow the arrests. 8 anarchists are charged with conspiracy. Several were not present when the bomb exploded, yet prosecutors argue that their speeches and writings inspired the attack. The trial becomes internationally controversial. 7 men receive death sentences, 1 receives a prison term, and 4 are eventually hanged. Others later receive clemency, while questions about evidence, jury selection, and fairness remain. Public opinion turns sharply against radical labour groups. The Knights of Labour lose support, though union organisation continues. Skilled workers increasingly join the American Federation of Labour, founded in 1886 under Samuel Gompers, focusing on practical gains in wages, hours, and conditions. You return to work after the marches, speeches, arrests, and funerals. The machines are still running. The foreman still holds the clock. The 8-hour day has not arrived for everyone, but the demand will not disappear. Industry asks you to remain patient. You have already given it most of your waking life. The nation celebrates liberty, but access to that liberty is profoundly unequal. In the South, Black Americans face racial violence, political intimidation, segregation, discriminatory laws, and the systematic erosion of rights gained after the Civil War. Sharecropping and debt systems trap many families in economic dependence. Black communities build schools, churches, businesses, newspapers, and mutual aid institutions while defending themselves against a society determined to restrict their progress. In the West, federal power continues the dispossession and forced assimilation of native peoples. Chinese immigrants face organized hostility, violence, and the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which sharply restricts immigration on racial grounds. Your experience of the Gilded Age, therefore, depends not only on money, but on race, origin, sex, and where the law has decided you belong. The country speaks constantly of freedom. Many people are still waiting to be included in the sentence. If you are black and living in the South, the promises made during Reconstruction are already being steadily withdrawn. Federal protection has weakened. White-controlled state governments impose new restrictions, while violence and intimidation are used to suppress voting and political participation. Elections continue, but reaching the ballot box may require passing men who have made their opinions known with rifles. The 15th Amendment says your right to vote cannot be denied because of race. Local officials respond by developing procedures that appear neutral on paper and become remarkably selective in practice. Registration rules, complicated ballots, fraud, threats, and economic pressure keep many black citizens from exercising rights the Constitution has generously confirmed and local power has quietly removed. Segregation is becoming more organized. Railway cars, schools, hotels, theaters, restaurants, and public facilities divide people according to race. Customs harden into laws. The Supreme Court will later give constitutional protection to this system, but its foundations are already being laid during the 1880s. Economic freedom offers little protection if you lack land. Many formerly enslaved families enter sharecropping arrangements, working farms owned by white landlords in exchange for a portion of the crop. The system sounds almost cooperative until you examine the accounts. Seed, tools, food, clothing, and other supplies are purchased on credit, often from a store controlled by the landlord or local merchant. Interest rates are high. Records may be unclear or deliberately dishonest. At harvest, your share of the crop is used to settle the debt. Somehow, despite months of labour, the account frequently shows that you still owe money. The debt carries into the next year, making departure difficult. Laws against breaking labour contracts, combined with the threat of violence, can bind families to land they do not own. Slavery has ended. The ability of powerful men to profit from restricted black labour has shown impressive adaptability. Yet black communities do not wait quietly for permission to build lives. Churches become centres of worship, education, political organisation, and mutual support. Teachers establish schools despite inadequate funding and violent opposition. Black colleges train ministers, teachers, doctors, and leaders. Newspapers report racial violence, promote businesses, debate politics, and insist upon citizenship in a country still pretending the matter is complicated. Families purchase land where they can. Entrepreneurs open shops, banks, funeral homes, newspapers, and professional offices. Mutual aid societies help members during sickness, unemployment, or death. Progress is achieved through skill, cooperation, courage, and the exhausting requirement to defend every gain. In the West, native nations face a different assault carried out through military power, land policy, ration systems, and schools. Reservation life is controlled by federal agents who regulate movement and supplies. Families who once travelled across vast territories find themselves confined to smaller areas where farming may be difficult and promised provisions unreliable. Children are taken or sent to boarding schools far from home. Their hair is cut, their names changed, and their languages punished. School officials claim to be preparing them for American life by teaching English, Christianity, trades, and domestic work. The education begins by informing the child that nearly everything familiar must disappear. Chinese immigrants face exclusion in law and hostility in daily life. They work in laundries, restaurants, mines, farms, factories, and small businesses, often after helping build the railways celebrated as national triumphs. White workers and politicians accuse them of lowering wages while employers continue hiring them precisely because lower wages are profitable. The Chinese Exclusion Act prevents most Chinese labourers from entering the country and makes family reunion painfully difficult. Violence drives Chinese residents from towns across the West, while courts and local authorities offer uneven protection. America welcomes labour, then becomes offended when the labourer attempts to stay. You listen to speeches praising opportunity and equal citizenship. Flags hang above public buildings. School children recite lessons about liberty. The words are beautiful, and many people believe in them sincerely. The difficulty is not that America lacks ideals. It is that the ideals keep encountering people the country has decided not to recognize fully. Freedom is available. Please consult the exclusions. At last, Night settles over America, although the modern city has become reluctant to go dark. Gas lamps line streets. Electric lighting glows in selected homes, theatres, hotels, businesses, and public spaces, dazzling visitors who gather simply to look at bulbs burning without flame. Elsewhere, kerosene lamps flicker, candles gutter, and coal fires settle into red ash. Trains continue moving. Newspaper presses begin printing tomorrow's arguments. Bakers start work before most families sleep. Factory districts remain noisy, saloons remain bright, and fire engines wait for the next spark in a city built largely of wood. You return to a bed that may be too cold, too crowded, too soft, too hard, or directly above a streetcar route. The day has delivered progress, danger, beauty, labour, invention, inequality, and several meals of uncertain composition. You close your eyes while America keeps building the future outside. Naturally, it has chosen to do so at full volume. The electric light is still a spectacle rather than an ordinary household servant. In parts of New York, visitors gather near brilliantly lit streets and shop windows simply to stare. The lamps shine without smoke, flame, or the constant trimming required by gas and oil. They appear almost magical, though behind each bulb stand generators, boilers, cables, engineers, and a system capable of failing without warning. In a wealthy home, electricity may illuminate the drawing room while servants remain uncertain whether touching the switch is entirely safe. Early wiring is sometimes installed with enthusiasm greater than experience. Insulation can fail, circuits can overheat. The new light removes the candle flame from the room and places several less visible risks inside the walls, which is progress in its most elegant form. Most households still rely on kerosene lamps, gas jets, or candles. You trim the wick, clean the chimney glass, and carry the lamp carefully from room to room. Kerosene is bright and practical, but a dropped lamp can turn a quiet evening into a neighbourhood event. Gaslight is steady, though leaks bring headaches, illness, and the possibility that striking a match will conclude the evening decisively. Outside, the street remains active. Saloons spill light and conversation onto the pavement. Theatre crowds wait for carriages. Police officers walk their beats, checking doors and encouraging sleepers to move away from entrances belonging to people with stronger property rights. Vendors sell late food to workers beginning or ending shifts that bear no relationship to daylight. The newspaper district grows louder as the rest of the city settles. Compositors arrange metal type. Presses thunder. Editors make final changes. Reporters hurry in with late stories, and ink spreads across pages announcing tomorrow's disasters before most readers have finished today's. Railway yards continue shunting cars beneath clouds of steam. Telegraph offices carry messages through the night. Freight wagons arrive at markets before dawn. The modern city has discovered that darkness is merely unused operating capacity. At home, bedtime depends on class, space, and employment. In a mansion, a maid turns down the bed, lays out nightclothes, places water nearby, and checks the fire. Heavy curtains close against the street. The mattress may be filled with hair, wool, cotton, or feathers, supported by springs that represent considerable comfort compared with earlier beds. In a tenement room, several people prepare to sleep within a few feet of one another. A table is cleared, clothing is hung from hooks, children are placed together. A boarder returning from an evening shift may take a bed recently vacated by someone leaving for night work. The mattress has become part of the household economy and does not receive regular rest. You wash quickly in a basin and change into a nightshirt or gown. The stove is banked so a few coals may survive until morning. Doors are checked. Lamps are extinguished one by one. The final flame trembles, shrinks, and disappears, leaving the room shaped by darkness and faint streetlight. Sleep does not come in silence. Hooves pass below. A train whistles in the distance. Pipes knock inside a modern building. Someone coughs through the wall. Somewhere nearby, an infant objects to the entire decade. Still, your body begins to soften into the mattress. The city sounds grow less distinct. Wheels become a low rhythm. Voices blur. Even the factories seem farther away. America continues moving through the darkness, carrying coal, messages, milk, newspapers, workers, and plans for a century that has not yet arrived. You do not need to supervise it. For tonight, the future can build itself.